Start, gentlemen, if y'all ready to go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to open this meeting of the Middlesex County Board of Supervisors for December the 5th, 2017. We will begin with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance. Wayne, will you say prayer for us today, sir?
Yes, I will.
All right, thank you.
Let us bow our heads in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we'd like to thank you for just waking up us this morning, giving us another lovely day, dear Lord. And dear Lord, let's pray for our servicemen and women overseas and help keep them out of harm's way. And dear Heavenly Father, let us make wise and just decisions as we conduct county business this evening. These and all the blessed in my Heavenly Father's name, amen.
Amen. Mr. Walker, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Would all citizens of our country rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all so much. Well, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen in the office, today is a very, I'm not going to call it a milestone, but it's an important thing happening to us today. We are going to be able to videotape our board meetings from now on, and you will see that you can go to the county's website and look at it, and it's kind of in its infancy right now, and we don't know how far we'll expand. I don't know if we'll go to YouTube or what, Kevin, but you can take care of all that for us. But so it's a banner day for us, and believe me, we're not going to be, when we have public comments, we won't be showing your faces and all. You'll hear your comments for sure, but just remember that. So I'm real pleased and really fired up about it. All right, very good. I will now call for the approval of the consent agenda with the meeting agenda, the minutes, disbursements, payroll. Does anyone have any questions, corrections, deletions?
I have one question on the minutes, Betty. On page 5 of the package, there's a guaranteed savings rate of 95%, and yeah, there's something wrong with that. Anyway, I don't have an answer for it. It's just a question.
Is that on solar panels?
My machine isn't up, so I think it was on the solar.
It was on the discussion of
Yeah.
solar panels. I'll go back and listen to that.
What I'd like to add to the agenda is some old business item from Mr. Jones, and it's about our airport right away and all. And Matt, we'll go ahead and put this on the agenda, and when it comes up, we'll discuss it down in old business at that time, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, very good, thank you. So, gentlemen, with the correction, do I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion, proper second. Are there any other comments at this time to be made? If not, I will call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion carries. All right, at this time, I'd like to open up the public comments period, please. And anyone, people in the audience like to come up and have a few words, please feel free to come and do so. And I'll recognize you, and you can, I saw a hand go up back. Yes, sir, come on up.
Yes, my name's Kenneth Carroll, and I live at 39 Huckleberry Drive in Hartfield. And I've got a problem constantly with the neighbors that come down from Richmond. Not every weekend, but whenever they do, it's a complete chaos down there. There's noise. They've got the radio turned up where people 2.5 blocks on either side can hear the music going. There's shooting off fireworks. They have a huge barn fire going. They throw some kind of explosive something in it, and sparks fly up everywhere, all over everything. And people's roofs, my garage has pine needles and all this other leaves on top of it, along with all the other people in the close vicinity. It's all over their roofs and stuff. So it's going to turn into where he's going to burn the neighborhood down if something isn't done. So I'm asking the board to adopt a law or an ordinance that can enforce this noise issue, because I've called the sheriff's department over a dozen times, and each time they tell me there's no way they can enforce anything other than go tell them to turn it down. And by the time they get around the block, they've turned it back up again, still throwing fireworks, and all hours of the night. There were 9 cars loads of people over there on Oyster Festival weekend. So you can imagine what the stuff with that was. They keep it going until 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. My bedroom window is right beside where they're at, so I have nowhere else to go. But they don't seem to care one way or another. They're down here to party, and this is what they're going to do, regardless of what anybody wants or likes or anything else. So anyhow, what I'm asking is to maybe come up with some sort of an ordinance that can give the deputies authority to go and write the people a summons or something to get this thing taken care of, because I mean it's nothing getting done. They think it's a joke.
Okay.
So anyway, that's my thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. See what we can discuss that and see what we can might do with something like that. Thank you, sir. Excuse me. Next person, please. Yes, sir. You holding your hand up.
My name is Don Loop. I live at 390 Park Street in Urbana, Middlesex County, and I'm a registered voter and property owner. The subject is the efficacy of laws and their necessity vis-a-vis, in this case, nudity. May I observe that this is a legal assembly and not an ecclesial one. Sometimes it would look like laws invite lawbreakers. People seem to be bound to break laws. Read the newspapers. Prohibition didn't stop drinking. Drug laws haven't stopped drug use. Count the number of people in jail for drug violations. Laws against illegal entry in the U.S. We have a tsunami of illegals. Don't even mention tax laws, just as some members of Congress. Just look at some members of Congress. Many laws act only to enrich certain sectors. I refer to the pain clinic abuses, for one, and the illegal drug industry. Nudity. In the 15 years I have lived in the lovely county of Middlesex, Virginia, I have never observed a nude person in public. I suggested in a letter to the editor that 12 cases of public nudity in the last year or 10 years, which offended the population, be recorded. I request if available they be presented to the board at this time, that being the minimum number which I think might justify the proposed law or ordinance. I suggest that the proposed law would simply act to prevent folks from doing what they are already not doing. A promiscuous proposal simply to fill a vacant spot in our code and thus supposedly justify our legislators' raison d'etre. With apology to the Commonwealth Attorney, Mr. Hurd, and the Supervisor, I remain ever your loyal and respectful servant, Don Loop.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Harold Muller. I live at 1939 Remlick Drive in Urbana. Gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. LeBoeuf personally for the 4 years of service that you've given to this county. It's been well appreciated and you'll be sorely missed. I don't think you'll miss the budget time coming up, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the budget time. We've just had a transfer of 2 major campgrounds within the area to 1,000 trails. Several years ago, I stood up at this podium and I asked to have a lodgings tax instituted. I was the only person that asked for that tax, and there was a whole host of attorneys and people from the recreational community, and it was going to devastate the county and all the surrounding areas. So that was not even undertaken. The next year, the campground raised the rates by between 10 and 15%. Nobody said anything about what that was going to do to the community and everything else. Now that Mr. Hurley has passed away, And that's a terrible thing to say, but I've heard it said many times from members of the community. It is now time to institute the lodgings tax. I'd like you to take a look at that, but at the same time, look at the service fee and the way that's implemented in Williamsburg. Because with the campgrounds and the transient people here, without a service fee, and Williamsburg uses I think it's $1 a night or $2 a night, we cannot capture all of the transients which rent on a seasonal basis. You won't be able to charge the 8% fee or whatever that comes out to be, but you can charge the service fee for overnighters within the community, even if they stay for a longer period of time. That's exactly what Williamsburg does, and some of the others. I don't think it takes General Assembly granting any special permission for that, but I would ask you to look that up. I would also at the same time ask you to look at the property tax on land use. I've been here for 9 years. I've been preaching this for 9 years. I don't like subsidizing golf courses. I know it's only $433,000 that we're losing, or approximately that much. And I know every farmer or every large landowner is going to say, well, I'll put my property in conservancy, and then we'll show you. Well, let them put it in conservancy, gentlemen, because that takes it off the tax rolls, and it reduces our composite index. And over 65% of our tax dollars goes to support the school system. So let them put all of that property, including Piankatank Golf Course, in conservancy. And that'll drive our composite index down to a point where we won't be taxed to death. I thank you all very much. Mr. LaBouffe, I wish you the very best, and I know you won't miss the budget process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Next person, please. Yes, sir.
My name is E.G. Fleet, 3674 Grays Point Road, Toppin, Virginia. I'm a farmer here in Middlesex. I own a golf course. However, I'm not here to debate that right now at the middle of the night. I'm here representing all homeowners, any landowner, gardeners, horticulture people, anyone in the county of Middlesex, Matthews, and Gloucester. We do not have a county agent now. I don't know if you all are aware of that. Without a county agent, yes, we rely on that quite a bit in our business. A lot of homeowners do. Yard, and everybody has a yard unless you live in a retirement home where you don't have to worry about it, but everybody has to look at that. I guess I'm up here saying we need one. I think we hooked up with Matthews and Gloucester. David Moore had been ours. He'd done all 3 counties, and he's retired. I don't know that we need a full-time one or not, but someone we can get in touch with on a state level that knows the laws, knows the things we need to do, and could help the whole county that way. That's really what I have.
Thank you, Mr. Fleet. Do I have someone else coming up? Okay, come forward, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
My name is George Sneed. I live at 6665 General Puller Highway,
George, pull that speaker down a little bit so we can hear you. There we go. Thank you, sir.
I never knew that someone couldn't hear me talk. I'm going to ask you to think about revisiting the way that you tax personal property, specifically utility trailers. I have a utility trailer that I bought in 2011. I paid $1,325 for it. I called the dealer from whom I bought it and asked him, what is my market value of this trailer today? He shocked me. He said $600. I opened my tax bill. The county of Middlesex says my trailer is worth $2,240. Now that is a factor of 1.69 times what I paid for it in 2011. Something is wrong. This just doesn't bear telling that a utility trailer is going to gain in value. It's like an automobile. The day I pulled it off the lot, it had lost value. So how the county can come and say to us, utility trailer owners, your trailer is worth 1.69 times what you paid for it, I just don't understand it. Now, I've gone through a lot of information. I've gotten information from the commissioner's office. They were very nice. And I think this problem has really existed for a long time, but it didn't come to the surface because you were only using a 0.35 factor. So when you use the 0.35 factor, then the price that the county was assessing our trailers at was within line. Now, I would suggest to you that probably the 0.35 factor comes about because some of the people that sat on this board before you realized that that is the factor that you could use from the buck guide, which would bring it down to a reasonable point. So not to bother you with, and I know, see I've got 36 more seconds, not to bother you with a lot of facts and figures, but please look at this. Sit down, take an example of a trailer. Look at what the county says it's worth. Ask somebody else, ask Trailer World, what is this trailer worth? And if you're going to do 100%, I love the 100% idea, but do it correctly. Have a reasonable figure, and when the owner gets the bill, they'll say, okay, this is within the range that I think it should be, and there won't be a lot of questions. It'll just be correct. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Sneed. Appreciate that, and we'll be looking into that, I think. Mr. Jesse, you and I have got a meeting scheduled for that. All right, anyone else have a comment at this time, please? Yes, sir, come forward.
Tom Fegum, Middlesex taxpayer, voter, and Wilton Creek is where we live. As long as we're talking about property taxes, let's start, oh, wait a minute. You probably don't want to go back and visit 2004 and 2008. I will tell you that I spent about 5 years in real estate in Denver, Colorado, about 40 years ago. And so property taxes have always been up here. Now, one thing I will guarantee you, you can't believe anyone who comes in to evaluate a property when you're going to buy it or sell it. You better give them that information or they're going to come out with God knows what. And I draw your attention to that because in this minutes that you're looking at today and the schedule for today, at the last 40 or 50 pages, there's all this business on solar panels. And a significant part of that is how much are the property taxes going to be affected and how much is property selling for now versus 2 years ago. Believe about that much. Let's talk about solar panels a little bit. How many natural gas, coal, or nuclear energy facilities providing electricity today will go offline when we put all these solar panel systems in our county? Zero. Zero. Do you know why? Because they're totally unreliable. For example, there's one in northern Minnesota that they know now will work producing electricity 75 days a year. You know how many states were affected by that solar eclipse we had, when was that, last August? 35 states were affected. Their solar panel production went, and for 5 of them it was totally wiped out. Let's talk about how many people are going to be affected by this whole solar panel business. Well, if you look at the number of production facilities of electricity that are going to go offline, be shut down, zippo. You know why? For the very reason we've been talking about. Because if a solar panel has a bump, a hitch, or whatever, that nuclear power, that natural gas powered, that coal powered facility needs to be online over right now to keep that voltage and amperage up where it needs to be to provide that district. If they're not there, you do without electricity. One other thing, if one person is needed in the coal industry, how many comparable people are needed in the natural gas industry? 2, how many people are needed in the solar energy industry to provide that same energy? 79 people are required. Now, we can go on and on about it costs twice as much for solar power as it costs for other forms of power, gas, natural, coal, and nuclear. I've got all sorts of information on these buggers. I'd be more than happy to send you the whole cotton picking thing. You can look through all 70 or 80 pages and learn about. But take a long, hard look at what these people are going to be paying in taxes. Look at how much those properties are going to be paying in taxes. And look who's going to pay for that stuff to be taken down in 25 years when it isn't working anymore. Me, the taxpayer. Just like me, the taxpayer is putting it in with my money. I thank you kindly.
Thank you, Mr. Fagan. Anybody else at this time, please?
John Kuntz, Hartfield. I wasn't going to speak today, but I thought I would cite a source for some statistics on solar. The Solar Energy Industry Association reports that in 2016, 39% of all new generation in our country is solar, versus 29% natural gas, 26% wind, and 6% other. So what we have here is a trend that is nationwide where we're adding solar, and it is not something that is a new trend. Solar prices dropped 19% over the last 12 months. There are now more than 1.5 million solar installations in the United States, 2,387 megawatts installed in Q1 2017, over 47 gigawatts of total solar capacity now installed. So the point here is this is not some newfangled trick. It is not something that taxpayers are bearing a burden any differently than we have on energy projects ranging from coal, natural gas, even hydro, wind, et cetera. So there is a complicated story, but I hope we'll all make a point of citing sources as we discuss it.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Seeing no one else, I'll go ahead and close the comment period, and we'll go ahead on to our next tab item, which is constitutional officers as needed. We do have the treasurer's report on page 43 and 45, gentlemen, so we have that in our notes and we can look at it. We should have already done that. So moving right along, I'm going to move into the agency and staff reports, starting with the Department of Transportation. Good afternoon. How are you, ma'am?
I am good. I didn't know I was going to make my television debut today.
Yes. Come on, Joyce.
Okay. Just a quick update. The Middlesex area headquarters has been working on some projects around the county on our maintenance side, mowing grass, limbing, potholes, that sort of thing. We also are ready for snow, and if you go up on 33 at the high school, you'll see there's a snow plow that the students painted, part of our Paint a Plow program. So we may have to go snatch it Friday and put it on a truck, but it'll be in good hands. I think they did a good job, so I think the recognition should go out to those students. I do think that the elementary school is doing one as well, so so that should be interesting. Lots of talented folks there at the school. Some other, I guess, projects that we finished the turn lane. It's got stripes and everything's good, so that's a good thing up there at 615. We also are going to be doing some shoulder repairs at Route 33 and Regent Road. There's some, the shoulders need some work there, so we're going to be working over there in the next couple of weeks. And also we have advertised to repair the boat ramp there at 643, I believe it is. I keep getting the number wrong. Marsh Pungo, then at the end, the boat ramp is under VDOT's jurisdiction and the end has broken off, and we've made a couple of attempts to repair it over the last 10-15 years, but we're going to go ahead and replace it. So that's out for bid. So if you see any work going on there or get any questions, that's what that's all about. And our residency office is coming along, so we may be neighbors again in June, I hope. So we'll see how the winter treats us for that. But other than that, I don't have anything else unless you have questions for me.
Joyce, thank you for repairing the Whiteness Creek Landing, because that
There you go, that's the name.
There you are. I remember the other end of it, but anyway, thank you all for doing that, because the ramp was really getting to a point where people were starting to damage some equipment all down there, and we appreciate that. Been asked the question, what is the exterior of your new building going to be? Brick? Wood? Brick.
Brick. We are trying to match the village here in Saluda with the colonial architecture, so it'll be brick and brick.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. That's all. You satisfied my question.
And slate roof. I think it's a slate tile roof and brick, colonial brick, so, and an off-white window. So.
Good Lord.
Trying to match the community.
Right. Better watch yourself. Some people in Richmond might want to move in on you down here. Nope. No. Okay.
That's my building.
Thank you, Joyce. No other
Anybody
questions,
else?
Gentlemen? All right, fine. Thank you so much. Have a great holiday, please. All right, is Dr. Kretz here? There's Dr. How are you, sir? Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Walker, everybody. Very quick matter of business today. As you're aware, our federal grants are given to us annually. We get the actual allocation sometime in the fall, usually late October. Applications are due, however, for those funds in July when we don't know the actual allocations. And so we typically use previous year's numbers to build those budgets. We just received the actual allocation for the Perkins grant, which is the item before you. And so the appropriation simply brings the actual fund into alignment with the true allocation.
Okay, so we need to make the appropriation for that. Question for you, the vocational, is that for the shop up and all at the high school, correct?
It's for a number of things related to career and technical education. Most of it is the high school.
Okay.
It supports the career day, field trips, the travel associated with that. There's several things related to career and technical, not just that program.
Okay, because I was asking,
Yes.
it's all vocational, just stuff.
It is all vocational, yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Dr. Pete.
Certainly.
Gentlemen, what is your pleasure on FY 2018-21, please?
I'll make a motion, we approve appropriation.
Second.
Okay, have motion and second. Any further comments, gentlemen? All right, this time I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. There you are, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a great holiday.
Dude, thank you.
All right. Moving right along, we have the social services, but as always, we have a report only, and they're on pages 47 and 48. Now we're going to move with Mr. Paul Lee, who's our auditor for our financial report. Mr. Lee, how are you this afternoon, sir?
I'm doing fine today. It's my pleasure to be here with you to present the audit for FY17. I say on the outset, as I've had in the past, the county received an unqualified or unmodified opinion on their financial statements as a whole. That's as good as you can get. Then you're looking for that, as well as there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies reported, and under the federal programs that we test, we had no findings there either. So I would say that's all good news.
Yes, sir.
We did issue, or kind of updated our management letter from a year ago, just noting fund balance at the end of the fiscal year, and what, if you put aside 20%, what might be available for appropriation in the current year. And I believe we're recommended that if you put away, or 5.8 million represents about 20% of your current budget, you would still have about 4.3 million if you needed to do any supplemental appropriations. Doesn't mean you have to, but just that amount's available without touching fund balance that too hard in a single year. Tax collection percentage still remains high. I think it was right at 98% this year. If you look, we've got a 10-year table in the back, and it's always been 100 to 98, somewhere in that range. So just always like to present that, or point that out to the board members, because when you do the budget in another month or so, you need to know, how much of that's going to be collected, or what can you expect to collect when you're doing a budget. So if you compare the current and the delinquents together, you're getting 98%. You can expect in some years even to get 100%. So that's all very good for that process. The only other thing I would mention is, as in the past, the first couple of exhibits in the audit report are on a full accrual basis. So when you're doing the budget or looking at balances, they're good things to compare from one year to the next, but they really don't represent the cash in the bank. So that's also the net position there is the buildings, the vehicles, the debt related to them coming off, whatever. So when in your budget process, you're really looking at Exhibit 3 on back. Other than that, that's what I wanted to present to you today, other than take any questions you may have.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Lee? Mr. Lee, I'll ask you a question like I asked all the other guys for years and years. Are we in good shape?
I think you're in very good shape, yes, sir.
Very good shape. That's right. The bottom line is we're in good shape, yes. So that's an important thing. No other questions for Mr. Lee? Mr. Lee, thank you so much for bringing that forward to us.
Okay.
Have a nice holiday,
Thank you. You too.
All right. Now we have the extension service up.
Mr. Chairman, you have to accept the audit as presented, and there is one addition I think Paul is going to work on just real quickly. And that was a summation of the tax increase that the board put into effect on personal property tax.
Right.
That would be added to some of the discussion in the audit. But I would recommend you accept the audit with that addition.
All right, gentlemen, do I hear a motion we accept the audit?
So moved.
All right, and a second. We have a second too, all right. Any other further questions? If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, audit is accepted. Thank you, Matt. Now we have extension service updates. Glenn Strum, unit coordinator, Rachel Miller, administrative assistant. Where are these folks? Nobody here today from extension service.
You're running a little ahead, so
maybe.
You're running a little ahead. So
well, if they come in a little bit later, we'll recognize them because there'll be different faces coming in. Well, we'll keep on going. Now we're going to have a demonstration, the video recording by Mr. Kevin.
There they are.
Here she is. Kevin, hold off just for a second. Come forward, please. There they are. Mr. Strum? Yes. Back there. Okay, very good.
Sorry,
Rachel Miller.
We're a moment late. Good afternoon, board members, Mr. Chairman. I'm Rachel Miller. I'm the administrative assistant for the Extension Office.
I'm Glenn Sturm. I'm the unit coordinator and the Family Consumer Science Extension agent.
And we're going to give you your yearly update for Extension. Okay. So you guys know that. Sorry, I have to catch my breath.
Ran up the steps again. Okay.
Those stairs are a little rough in 3-inch heels. So you guys know that David Moore did retire back in March, and we are without an extension agent. And then our 4-H agent resigned in July. So with myself working closely with my unit coordinator, Glenn Sturm, and our new district director, Janet Spencer, and in the Matthews Extension Office, we've been able to keep extension going through our county this year. Some of the things that we've done are we have. Sorry.
You want to sit down for a minute? Are you okay?
No, I think it's between the stairs and public speaking fear is what's going on here.
Okay, fine. Just relax. We're fine. Thank you.
So this year we did gain our first 4-H club that we have not had in a few years. They are the Tri-County 4-H Club, and they are made up of 22 youth between Middlesex, Matthews, and Gloucester.
Okay.
In September, that 4-H club did attend the Virginia State Fair Fine Arts and Crafts and Baked Goods contest, and they brought home 4 first, 8 second, and 2 third-place ribbons. Do you want to do your part? And
yes, I can.
Okay. I do need to sit down.
Rachel, sit down for a second. You're fine.
I actually had some PowerPoint slides. Is there any way to get that up?
I can try to
it's
pull that.
It's part of the packet now.
It may be inverted, though. That's the thing. Let's see.
Go ahead and right here.
Yeah, that back.
Yeah, hit the light.
Back in here to 500 pages.
Oh, that's fine. There we go. Okay, and there's no way for me to click through that. Okay, that's fine.
I'll scroll for it.
Okay. So I'm excited to get to meet everyone. I've actually been servicing the county for about 5.5 years now, so I know not everybody's always excited to be in front of the board, but I am, so I get to talk about some of the awesome programs we do with Family Consumer Sciences. So it's one of the 3 major programming areas here with Extension. If you can go ahead and scroll down. So primarily what I do with Family Consumer Science, I'm trying to make this brief, is usually 3 different disciplines within Family Consumer Sciences. My background's in finance, so mostly it's financial management, consumer education. I'll talk about some of the programs we're already doing here in this county. Some health and nutrition, food safety as well. Then I'll list some others when we get to that point. Go one more. Really quick introduction about myself. So I have I've been with Extension since March of 2012. I serve 4 different counties. I'm actually based out of the Gloucester office, but I serve Gloucester, Matthews, Middlesex, and Essex County. So I do have a split assignment. Just in terms of my educational background, my bachelor's was in finance. My master's degree is in education. Just to kind of know where most of my programming does lie. Now just to run through a couple of those Family Consumer Sciences programs, since I know a lot of people may not be aware of what exactly we do have to offer. By far the biggest thing we teach, or I teach within this area, is budgeting and personal finance workshop. It's about a 2 to 2.5 hour workshop, which, before I go into too much into depth with the other ones, with the exception of the Wellwater Clinic, these are all programs also that we offer for free to the community. So there's no registration fee for any of these with the exception of the Wellwater Clinic. So it's about a 2-hour workshop, talked about things like creating financial goals, how your values impact your goals, what are spending leaks, credit cards, the pros and cons of that, what shows up on your credit report, what are the 5 components that make up your FICO credit score, some cost-cutting ideas. And the main partners I've worked with here in Middlesex is Hands Across Middlesex and Department of Social Services. So it's usually the clients I work with. But all these programs are available to anyone in the public that's interested. We do one-on-one financial mentoring as well, and that's kind of taking that piece and having some one-on-one time to actually say, all right, now that we've talked about how to do these things, let's actually sit down and create that spending plan. Let's actually sit down and create that debt repayment plan. Let's actually sit down and work on how are we going to address those 5 areas of credit, for instance. And again, that's a free program we offer. We are also the only organization that offers that required Department of Justice bankruptcy debtors education course, the in-person version. Because if you do it in this area, you either have to do it online or work with us because we're the only in-person provider for that. Some other ones, the high school personal finance, so similar ideas to that budgeting personal finance, but obviously since it's dealing with high schoolers and youth, it's more interactive learning, more hands-on activities, because it's a little more meaningful there. And I have done that in the past with Middlesex High School before. Does anybody know the Reality Store program? It's a youth simulation. We've done it at St. Clair Walker for the last 4 or 5 years. It's an opportunity for 8th graders to actually get a set, pretend basically monthly income, job, family situation. And then we have volunteers from the community that will booth different stations, and those stations represent typical household expenses. So it gives them a really good hands-on experience of how to actually manage your money and see some of those responsibilities they'll have as an adult. Also, Right on the Money program, which is actually for really young ages, like 5 to 9. And that's something where we have, obviously since it's a very young group, that's something where we have, a story that we get to read, a really short, like 5-minute discussion, and that's really hands-on activities, like making their first piggy bank. We actually do a Skittle investment game, so just like where you don't want to reach into your investments or savings, the longer they don't do that, the more interest they get and the more Skittles they'll have at the end. So fun little learning opportunities like that. The Money Talk program is a really intensive 5 2-hour session program that talks about things like financial management, basics of insurance, investment, retirement, some real basics with estate planning. This was actually developed by Rutgers Cooperative Extension, and the idea behind this was primarily targeting women, particularly women that are maybe divorcees or maybe widowers that are managing their finances for the first time. Provide them that really hopefully that in that 10 hours they'll be a lot more comfortable managing their finances. So that's the idea behind that program. Something that's been a lot more popular recently, particularly with the Equifax hack, is identity theft prevention program. And we did actually just offered that at the library maybe a month, 2 months ago, open to the public, which that was a free program as well. Resume writing and interview techniques, and again, you can see there's a few partners we've worked with in the past, Insight Enterprise, Department of Social Services here, Hands Across Middlesex, a number of different organizations right here in Middlesex. Some health and nutrition programs. I'm going to group some of these together since I know I'm using up a lot of time. But things like the My Plate and Cooking Matters, that's like teaching basic nutrition about the 5 food groups, but actually having hands-on food preparation, and this is for both youth and adults. So it's a way for them to do healthy food prep themselves, which has obviously a nutritional as well as a financial benefit there. And the Small Steps to Health and Wealth program, the thing we really like about that is a lot of educational programs are kind of do this, don't do this, where that one instead has a structure. All right, here's 25 behavior change strategies that you can apply to whatever goals you have, or pick and choose some of them, and you should see a benefit towards achieving that goal. Some other ideas, so FitX is a online web-based competition. It's kind of like, if everybody has these Fitbits, it's similar to that, but it's team-based, and obviously since we're an educational institution, the big piece of that is the educational component with 8 weekly newsletters, as well as usually I try and incorporate some type of educational walk and talk to go with that as well for the participants if they're interested. Nutrition label reading, and just again, the how-to, how you analyze the nutrients on there, and we've done that with seniors at Bay Aging here. We've done that at the library before as well. The walk-away program takes a little bit of a twist and make sure that we add the educational components along with an actual physical activity component. So what it is about 30 minutes of nutritional education and then a 30-minute walk and talk so that we have 30 minutes of exercise. We'll also get in to discuss, what are some of the challenges you've had? What are the ways we can kind of improve on some of these issues? The big one for food safety that we've offered in this area is cooking for crowds. And what that predominantly is that, where Serve Safe is for required food handlers, and that's a really important, valuable program, but it is very time intensive, it is expensive, so for those churches and nonprofits that aren't required to have that Serve Safe, this gives an opportunity for a free hour-and-a-half, 2 hours of what's the basic, really important food safety components so that, 1, you protect yourself in terms of liability, but 2, just generally to benefit the community so less people get sick from these events. All right, real quick. Whew, I know I'm trying to go quick. Causing myself to sweat too. All right, catch breath real quick. All right, one other big one we've done here before is the Well Water Clinic. This is, again, the one program we do charge for. We do test for 14 different contaminants. We talk about some of the remediation strategies and some, for these different contaminants, what are the health risks behind them as well. Last time we had done it in Middlesex was 2015. We had about 20 households participate. We are doing it again in 2018. I do not have the dates for that yet, but it will likely be late summer in 2018. But while we do charge for that, that is something that if it was done privately for those specific 14 contaminants, you're usually looking about $350 to $450. The facilitation and leadership for community initiatives, that's something I've also received training on, something I am passionate about. I've done that often with the resource councils in the area. I don't know, how many of you are familiar with ECHO, the homeless organization in Essex County? So that's something that actually was one of the projects that we at Extension were involved with in terms of helping facilitate that group to start meeting, to organize, get the right stakeholders together, hold a public forum. And that's something I've been really proud to be able to be a part of is getting helping to form the first homeless organization in Essex County. And then, of course, just some cross-programming, working with 4-H programs and making sure we enhance those programs and provide those same opportunities to the youth. Real quick, I just want to run through a couple things in terms of, for us to continue our mission, what are some of the things that short-term, long-term might be helpful. One obvious one that's been an issue or it's been brought up before is ADA compliance, particularly as it relates to those with physical disabilities being able to access our office. And we understand county budgets are obviously not unlimited. We can't just, proper space doesn't just pop out of nowhere, and money to renovate doesn't just pop out of nowhere. But in the short term, we did have a buzzer system installed, and we do want to say thank you for that. That's been very helpful for us. And the only other thing we're really looking for short term is some flexibility in terms of office space, because we know we have another department that shares the building with us downstairs, and just if it comes to where we have someone who's hired with an extension, who has a physical disability, who's unable to work upstairs, we hope you'll be willing to be flexible and work with us on that issue. Then obviously for the really long term, if an ADA compliant workspace comes up, I do hope you will consider us for that. Ignore the security issue. That was something that was relevant at the time I wrote this, is no longer relevant anymore, so we're just gonna skip that. But the one other thing that would be really helpful is, particularly since we don't have any full-time people in that office at the moment, is when people come to request forms, sign up for 4-H things, pesticide recertification for my classes, stuff like that, is to be able to have bins or something, whether it's mailed or stuck to the side of the building, so they can access those forms either after hours or when we're not currently in. All right. Does anybody have any questions for me before I turn it over to Rachel?
Yeah, I have a question. With the well water part that you talked about?
Yes.
Those filters that you buy that's supposed to get out certain contaminants that you put on the end of your faucet, do they work well? Have you tested anything on those?
Well, one thing is there does not exist a filtration system that addresses every contaminant. Most, and there's exceptions, but most of the ones that you're talking about right at the end of the faucet, those are usually for like heavy metals, for like lead, maybe arsenic, things like that, but they won't address bacterial issues. They probably won't address things like nitrates. So it's a lot of it's, if you're getting a filter, is reading what exactly it deals with, because nothing deals with every contaminant.
Right. Okay, I'll just, thanks.
Mr. Strum, let me ask you a question. We just had a gentleman come up here in our comments period, and David was always out with, who takes care of David's responsibilities as far as interacting with the farmers and people who want to have their dirt tested and that type of stuff?
Well, in terms of agricultural natural resource responsibilities, we are fortunate to have our district director here today, who will answer some of those questions. So I will give her the opportunity if you'd like to come up and I guess use this as a platform to ask any questions related to all of that.
Sure, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you? I'm Janet Spencer. I'm the district director for the Southeast District. Just started this position about 6 months ago, so I may not have all the answers for you today, but right now, since David's position, since he retired, we've been getting assistance from extension agents outside of Middlesex County. So they've been able to handle some of the producer questions or issues that have come up. They've been able to assist with production meetings and pesticide recertification, and Rachel has done a phenomenal job in the Middlesex office assisting with things like soil samples and some of the day-to-day questions that come up that are related to agriculture.
Okay, because I mean, a lot of people will go ahead and look at their fruit trees or something and go, what in the world is that? And then so they can see Rachel and everything.
They do, and Rachel's done a great job in cases where she's been able to provide the answers or provide resources. She's been doing that, and if it's something that maybe she just can't assist with, she has been able to call on other extension agents to provide resources or assistance as needed.
Very good, thank you. That answered my question, gentlemen. Anybody have any further questions for the, okay. But we're real supportive of the 4-H people in the camp and all that stuff. We really, it's really a nice thing, and it works well for our youth here in the county too.
Yes, sir, and we are supported to keeping 4-H in this county. As I alluded to, I've only been in this position for 6 months, and unfortunately, I've come in a time where the state is facing some pretty significant budget reductions. But I'm working with Glenn and with Rachel and with the other unit coordinators and extension agents in the area, as well as the other county administrators up here in the Middle Peninsula, to determine what we can do to address the needs and keep coverage in these areas and not overly stress our staff and our agents that we have in place now.
Very good, thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, just to add to that, I've been working with Ms. Spencer to look at different alternatives where maybe perhaps Middlesex County shares an extension, a part-time extension agent with another county, perhaps Matthews. So we're looking at different scenarios.
Okay.
There's a lot of creative ways that we can look at this. I am actually meeting with Mr. Walker and the other county administrators at some point in time, I believe in January, and we'll be discussing the ag agent positions as well as probably looking at some alternatives for the 4-H program as well.
Very good. Thank you so very much. Do y'all have anything further?
Rachel?
Looks like there's no questions. Rachel, do you have anything else?
Let me try this again.
Let's try it. You're fine. You're not hurt yet, so you're okay.
Right now, I'm okay. Okay, so I'll let you guys know about our new 4-H club we have in the county. Some other things that we've been able to do with Extension this year, being short-staffed as we are. Middlesex did co-host a 2-day food challenge day camp with the Matthews Extension office. Glenn Sturm was actually involved in that. We had 5 youth from Middlesex who did attend that. In July, we did hold our 2nd annual Summer Sizzling Fair along with our 4th annual tomato contest. At the fair, we did have 25 vendors in attendance, and even though it did pour rain all day long, we had more people attend that event than we did the prior year when it was about 90-some degrees outside. Through that event, with our tomato contest, we did have 5 youth and 5 adults participate, and we were able to raise enough money through private donors, and vendor fees to give out $650 in prize money to our contestants that won. From between July 31st and August 3rd, we did host our annual 4-H Clover Bud Day Camp at the Saluda Baptist Church, where we had 4 youth in attendance. August 14th through the 18th, our Middlesex youth attended the Jamestown 4-H Educational Center Junior 4-H Summer Camp, along with Matthews, King William, and King and Queen counties. Middlesex took 3 teens, 57 youth, and 3 adult volunteers. On November 18th, the Extension office hosted a holiday bazaar. We did only have 12 vendors in attendance, but between our vendor fees, our door prize money that we got in, and our 50-50 cash raffle, we were able to raise enough money to send 1 child to camp this coming summer. A few other things. Last week, on the 28th, we did hold a private pesticide recertification class, which we did make David come and volunteer at, just so you know. And we did have about 30 in attendance in that. And then in January, we do plan on hosting our yearly Lower Middle Peninsula Ag Conference.
Very good.
And that's it.
Thank you.
I'll add to that the 4-H Club is meeting at the Free Shade Community Center.
Yes,
Good show.
they are. And we have both of our events with the Summer Sizzling Fair and the Holiday Bazaar. We have been able to use the Free Shade Community Center, and we greatly appreciate you all letting us to use that.
Very good. Thank you all so much.
Thank
for
you.
coming. Rachel, you're welcome anytime. Come on back to see us. And thank you all so much for the report and the update. We really appreciate that. All right, gentlemen, we're moving right along. Now we're going to see Mr. Gentry for our demonstration and our video recording. So, Mr. Gentry, approach the podium, please.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'm Kevin Gentry. I'm the Director of Information Technology for the county. And I was asked not too long ago by the chairman and the county administrator to look at how we might record video of our Board of Supervisors meetings in the interest of making them available to the public so the public would have better access to the meetings. So that's what I've done. We're very early in the infancy of the project, as it were. So you see the cameras running at this time. It's a work in progress. We're probably going to need to do some things with moving it around. We may add a second camera. But just for today, we wanted to at least get one in the can and get something so that we could put it out there. Looking at different ways of how we might present that information, there's a number of different ways that we could do it. One of the ways that we've looked at is a product called Granicus, and Matt has a example of that. Our county to the south, Gloucester County, is actually using this. And what this is you're able to pull up the agenda and the video side by side, and you can actually click through and skip ahead in the video. It's a pretty neat product. It's used by quite a few different localities, about 3,000. So that's what we're looking at. There's good points and bad points to it. There's some technical hurdles that we have to get through. If you guys want to take a look at this product, we're certainly willing to do a deeper dive with the Granicus folks and find out exactly what the, if that's a good fit for us. My thought is that it is. It's not the only one. And basically, what that would do is we would upload the file to Granicus. It would stream from their servers, and as you can see, you'd be able to skip through it and look at it. I've got some initial costs if we were to do something like that. The upfront cost would be around $10,000 to get it started, and then there would be an annual renewal fee of around $5,000. But as you can see, it's a pretty polished product, and it works quite well. Now, we've also tried to do something in-house. It has its strengths and weaknesses. It wouldn't cost as much, obviously, but it would put a bit of a hit on our service here as far as our broadband access. It would use bandwidth. It would use storage on our servers. We wouldn't have to do that. They host it for us. Also looking at eventually getting this on our public access channel, but we're not quite there yet. Any questions?
Kevin? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
What would be the operational cost of this Granicus? You mentioned $10,000 and $5,000, but would it cost something to prepare each session for viewing? In other words, the link between the video and the documents has to be done by someone.
Sure. Right.
Does Granicus do that, or does somebody here have to do that?
No, that's a software piece and that would be done by staff. So there would be some stuff on our part that we'd have to do. It might be done in real time by Beth. She has like 4 or 5 hands over there. She can do that. Or it could be done post, where Glenn or I or whoever can go in and set these time stamps.
Any sense of how long that would take per meeting?
To get it in this format?
Yes.
Not yet. I don't know that yet. It's supposed to be, and I want to meet with Gloucester and talk to them about the way, because they've pretty much got it down, and I haven't had a chance to do that. I apologize, but it's a pretty streamlined process once you get it in place. That's my understanding of it.
Thank you.
Just to add real quickly to what Mr. Gentry said, Kevin, when we first started looking through the different counties in the Commonwealth, and we actually looked at several cities and towns in Florida too that I was familiar with, having vacation down there enough, the Granicus software just continues to be prevalent. I mean, we were amazed the afternoon we spent looking through the different counties that have this ability to go on the web with their meetings, how many of them use the software, and I mean, large, small, of all sizes, stripes, and imagination, but they seem to have a very large market share, and it's primarily, I think, because of what Kevin has already alluded to earlier, the ability for the public to pull this up and actually click on only the portion of the meeting they have an interest in without having to sit through a long YouTube video or something of that effect. And I can demonstrate that if the board would like.
So that's what I was thinking. I like the way that this is set, so if you want to get to a topic that you're most interested in, you just scroll down and go to that topic, and you can listen to what was discussed on it.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Very good. All right. Anybody else have any other questions for Kevin? We'll pursue and see what we can come up with, and I'm real excited about it, Kevin.
Okay. Would you like me to come back and demonstrate again, like you do a deeper dive with technical people, or do you want to go ahead with it? Do you guys have a sense of?
We're fine getting you the information you may need.
Okay.
So, yeah, just let me know. Whatever you need is fine.
Get it here to us and maybe see how everything works, Kevin.
Okay.
Okay?
Sounds good.
Good enough. Thank you so very much. We appreciate that, man. All right, now we're going to hear from Mr. Mike Jenkins, friend of mine. Hi, Mike, how are you?
Good, sir.
And about the workforce investment.
Right.
I know how old we're getting. I'm surprised you're still working there.
Limited time, sir, limited time.
I hear you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, county staff. My name is Mike Jenkins, and I'm the Executive Director of the Bay Consortium Workforce Development Board. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here to share some information with you this afternoon. And I think The next item on your agenda is an agreement that I've sent out to you all, and what I'll do is try to give you a little bit of background, and then we'll talk about the agreement and answer any questions that you might have. But our organization, our basic responsibility is to administer the Federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act, which is a fairly new Federal Workforce Act. It's been around for a couple of years, and the Commonwealth has taken the last couple of years to get it fully implemented here. This is the fourth one of these federal programs that I've worked with down through the years. As Mr. Chairman spoke, I have been around for a little while. Don't intend to stay much longer. So anyway, but the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act is, as I mentioned, it's a federal program administered at the federal government level by the United States Department of Labor. Funds are available to all 50 states. Technically, the funds come to the governor of each state across the nation. In Virginia, the governor has designated the Virginia Community College System to be the state entity that administers the program. And then there are 15 workforce regions around the state. Virginia loves to carve up the state in different regions, and none of them ever match. So they all run. But we're one of those. And just cutting it on down a little further, Middlesex County is one of 16 jurisdictions that formed the Bay Consortium back years ago, and we're at a point now where we just need to implement a new agreement between the 16 jurisdictions to be a part of this region to continue providing workforce development services. I had initially thought this had to be done by July 1 of 2017, and I was incorrect. This does not have to be done until next July 1, 2018, so, as far as getting an agreement signed. But the new act was signed by the President in 2014, and we are in the process of further implementing it here in the state. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA as we call it, provides funding to our region, and we receive about $2 million a year, up or down through the years to provide services to those 16 jurisdictions. And we get three basic pots of money: one to serve what the Act defines as an adult, which is an individual at least 18 years old or older. We also have funding to provide services to dislocated workers, which are individuals who get laid off because of downsizing or business closures. And then we have also have a pot of funds to serve youth, which start at age 16 and can go all the way up to 24. So there's a little bit of an overlap between the youth and adult, between that 18 and 24-year-old age group. But we use these funds to help train and retrain individuals to get them either started to work or back to work, one or the other. And just to give you a little information on what we've done in Middlesex County, the last fiscal year, which started July 1, 2016, ended June 30, 2017, 11 individuals received paid services through our programs. There are a lot of services that are free, and individuals could get those as well. Our office is located in Warsaw. We don't provide services to the clients. We contract out through requests for proposals, competitive procurement, and we currently have contracts with Rappahannock Community College locally and an organization up Route 33 near West Point called Job Assistance Center. So those are our current contractors. We're getting ready to issue new RFPs in February, so we'll be going out for a new round of bids, and hopefully we'll create some competition and see if we can get some things going. But of those 11 individuals, 4 were adults, 5 were youth, and 2 were what we called incumbent workers, and that's another program where we can provide training to upgrade skills in existing employers. So these are people that are already working, and they took some kind of course to upgrade their skills from level A to level B. So we had 2 individuals that did that, and we were able to invest $32,165 for Middlesex County residents during that period of time, for an average cost of a little under $3,000 per person. It'll vary based on what types of services that you do. And this can be classroom training, on-the-job training, lots of different kinds of things. And some of the credentials earned by these individuals were Class A commercial driver's license, certified nursing assistants, medical aid certification, welding, OSHA certification, marine boat lift operator certification. Those were the 2 areas that we did the incumbent. We worked with a couple of marinas here in the county and were able to upgrade some skills with some folks there. So our organization is set up as a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, which enables us to go after discretionary grants as well as the monies that are appropriated to us by the federal government. And we have been successful down through the years. Currently, there's a program that we're operating here at the regional jail here in Saluda and the regional jail in Warsaw, where we have folks going in working with inmates I don't know the exact time, 6-8 weeks before their release, or maybe even before, to try to help them transition from incarceration to get them employed. So that's a grant that we got outside of the normal funds that we receive. The agreement that I think is on your agenda on the next, it is simply an agreement that if you all are act favorable on that, Middlesex would remain a part of the regional workforce development area. There's a little bit of a different twist going forward. Before, you all as boards of supervisors appointed citizens members to serve on the workforce development board. Your current representative for that board is Mr. Lou Belcher. And moving forward, we'll continue to have the citizen board, but the federal government wants to have more interaction from elected officials, so we're going to have what we call the Chief Local Elected Officials Board. So we'll have 2 boards. I've drafted up some bylaws, and I'll send them out to Mr. Walker, and so you all can take a look at that. But basically, Mr. Miller, as chairman, you can serve on that board, or you can appoint. And there's a list of people, and it doesn't really have to be supervisors. It could be other county folks, an economic development person, a school board person, or something. But we'll send those bylaws out, and that local elected group will. The way I'm proposing is that group would meet twice a year. The citizen board meets quarterly. So the local elected officials board would not meet but half the number of meetings. I mean, I know everybody doesn't want more meetings to go to these days, but anyway, and within the agreement, all 15 counties in the city of Fredericksburg. I failed to mention the region is pretty large. It starts north, Stafford County, takes all of the greater Fredericksburg area, the northern neck, the middle peninsula, with the exception of Gloucester. Gloucester belongs to the workforce board over in Hampton and Newport News. And then we have Accomack and Northampton. So pretty widespread, pretty diverse. The federal statute requires that one of those counties serve as the grant recipient. Since we're located in Warsaw, Richmond County has agreed to do that, and that's spelled out in your agreement as well. So I will stop, because I mean I've been known to ramble, and I could stand here for a while and ramble on, but I don't want to take your time up. I'll stop now and entertain any questions that any of you might have.
Any questions for Mike? Oh, go ahead, Chip, please.
Help me understand again. You said the federal government wants an elected official on this board that meets twice a year.
Right.
And that is, I'm reading section 2, it sort of aims at chairpersons, but they can designate somebody.
Right, that's the bylaws that we developed will spell that out. Now, I don't have those with because they're still in draft form, but basically what that says is your chairman can either serve himself or herself as that representative or appoint someone.
And that appointed person does or does not have to be an elected person?
Does not.
Okay, thank you.
It could be if you have an economic development director. Some counties will appoint there because economic development, workforce development kind of go hand in hand. So
when I was on there with you, Mike, we had people from everywhere, didn't we?
Oh, yeah.
Years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, the size of the board varies. I mean, I think when Mr. Miller was working with us, we probably had 35 people. I mean, it's down to like 22 now. It's still a lot, but it's a little more manageable now than it was. So.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Mike at this time before we go into the workforce investment agreement? Heather, have you looked this over? the workforce. It's pretty, I think it's,
I mean, Mr. Chairman, I reviewed it when it was given to me in my packet. I was not given it to me prior.
okay.
So, I mean, I have read it, but it was only as of Friday.
Sure. But it's pretty orange.
Well, it's very, you signed one very similar to this in 2000.
I thought we did
Yeah.
too. Okay, all right.
What are we committing ourselves to?
You're committing yourself, you're agreeing to have Middlesex County be a part of this region. I'm not going to ask you for any local dollars. I simply want to have permission to spend the federal government's money in Middlesex County.
Simple as that.
I mean, that's usually my line at every board of supervisors. I just want to spend the federal government's money in your community, so, and to help people. I mean, our goal is to help people, so. So no, I won't come back, and my plan is to retire about a year from now.
I hear you, Mike.
So this may be my last rodeo as far as getting one of these agreements lined up. So,
But we've been quite successful in getting money here in the county, Mike.
oh, I think so.
I think we really have. So, all right, gentlemen, what do y'all want to do with this this agreement, please?
I certainly move that we agree with it.
Thank you, Mr. Mansfield. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chesney. We have a motion and a proper second. Any further questions for Mr. Jenkins? All right, very good. At this time, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 All opposed, same sign. Mike, we're with you for a while longer.
For a year, anyway.
Anyhow.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mike.
All you need to do is, once you get a chance, you sign it, and I think you need to get somebody to witness it.
Okay.
The signature lines.
We'll take care of all that.
I've got a clean copy if you want me to leave you one here. A couple of them. I know it's in your packet, but.
There you go. Give it to Betty.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thank you all.
All right, Mike, like I said, have a nice holiday, my friend.
Okay, take care.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a real nice part of the meeting today. I love the way it's called Acceptance of Local Art. And Mr. Bob Cates has been kind enough. He painted these two paintings when the Maritime Museum caught fire in Deltaville. And he painted these two paintings, and he wants to present them to Middlesex County so our citizens can look at them and certainly enjoy them. And they will be, if everything, I will call for a vote here shortly to accept these, but they'll be hung in a hallway down near the treasurer's office. So since that's pretty busy all the time, that a lot more of our county residents will certainly enjoy them. And they're quite beautiful, Bob, and we appreciate them. And I'll turn it over to you, and you can kind of give us a little history of them and all that stuff, too.
Well, thank you, Chairman Miller and Board. These two paintings are paintings of the aftermath after the fire. The fire is really a historic event in this county, and it will becoming thankfully more of a historic event as time goes on. But the museum after the fire rose like a phoenix, and it's to the credit of the volunteers and the people that spill their guts to put it all together and make it work for the citizens of the county. And I thought it would be nice to paint a painting, two paintings that would be public art, that could hang in a public place where citizens could see them from time to time. And where you plan to hang them over a number of years, thousands of people will see these these paintings. And they will quietly show appreciation for what these volunteers and first responders do for this county. We would be a much poorer place if it wasn't for their contribution. And I think these paintings do that. The painting on the right is called Heroes, and that's dedicated to the first responders. And the one on the left is actually a 14-year-old kid that is the son of a fireman that goes to all the fires. And it shows that the volunteers come in all sizes, on all shapes, and I hope you appreciate them, and that's why I want to gift them to the county, and hope that they'll hang for many years.
Thank you, Bob. I'm going to got to do a little business here real quick, and we'll get right back with you. Gentlemen, what's your pleasure on this, please?
Mr. LaBeouf is
Go ahead.
very involved with the museum.
I move we gratefully accept the paintings from Bob on behalf of the county.
Very good, and we do have a second. Thank you, two gentlemen. And at this time, I'll call for, no questions, of course, but I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and resume our meeting. I hope everybody got an opportunity to take a look at the paintings. They're very nice. And with that, we will move on with the master agreement with Virginia Department of Aviation. Who's going to handle that for us, please?
That's between Miss Muncie and I.
All three of y'all looking and grinning at each other.
I can introduce it, Mr. Chairman, and then turn it over to the ladies, who I'm sure will do an exceedingly better job than I explaining the airport agreement.
Okay.
You may remember in 2010, I think we had a similar agreement. Basically, it's an agreement that we have to implement in order for us to receive grant monies through the state, federal pass-through grant monies and state grant monies. So in your packet, it's fairly self-explanatory. You have the grant agreement that would allow, will accept the terms and conditions for the state to continue to provide aviation funding to Hummel Field and to the county. Through the Virginia, Commonwealth Airport Fund and the Aviation Special Fund. I think I hit the high points.
I think you did.
Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, so what I did is this was presented to me to be reviewed. I did review the agreement, but as you'll notice from the cover letter dated November 16th of 2017, one of the main changes here has to do with audits. And essentially the state is saying, if we're giving you money, we want to really be very specific about how you're using it, and we want some documentation. So I actually reached out to Airport Service Division, and I spoke with a very nice lady named Susan Simmons. And she advised me that this really is not actually applicable to Middlesex County.
Okay.
However, because it's one agreement that applies to us all, this amendment is really geared towards the larger aircraft carrier airports. That we did not, you had to be very specific, a part of 14 CFR 139 airport. And she said we did not meet that qualification. So that this really is just for us to know, but not so applicable to us.
But
unless we become one of those large airport carriers, and then it would.
But I can tell you that they have gotten more stringent on the documentation that they require for submitting applications for funding.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a good thing.
It is.
It is. That's a good thing.
It's just transparency. Their ideas.
Sure.
We're giving you money. We want to make sure it's being spent the way that we've asked you to do so, or the way you've asked. And so anyway, gentlemen, I've reviewed it. I don't see anything that's alarming, especially after speaking with Ms. Simmons and being advised that really most of it's not applicable anyway. I did have questions prior to that, but she addressed those. So I'm happy to answer if you have any specific ones.
Okay, good enough. All right, gentlemen, how do y'all want to dispose of this?
Mr. Chairman, this is sort of like an agreement we handled a little earlier. It obligates us to just accept money when they have it for us. So I would move to approve it.
Yeah, we accept money. Okay. So I have a motion. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jessup. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other further questions, comments at this time? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move right along. We have an appropriation request.
You have a couple of those.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe there's three in your packet that I'll try to handle here. The first is FY 2018, number 18, for the Treasurer's Office, the passport funds that they've collected. We do this, I can't remember whether we do it twice a year or once a year, but we typically They will collect passport fees, and there's been a previous agreement with the previous boards that we would give them back 80% of that money, and the county keeps 20%. So this is appropriating those fees. Number 19 is just a reimbursement from the state, putting it back into the social services budget for some travel expenses that they were refunded for $686.56. And then the big one is, and Matt might address this one, is number 20. This is a $50,000 refund from the Water Authority because the county paid this $50,000 up front for the Water Authority to apply to the Virginia Department of Health for a grant to do the alternative water study, water source study for the water project. And so this is reimbursing the county from the grant funds that the Water Authority received and putting it back into the budget.
County coffers. I couldn't have said that any better.
Well, I know you couldn't.
Certainly not in so few words.
Not so few words, I'll admit that, Betty. Thank you for the brief enlightenment you gave us on these appropriations requests. So we have 3 of them at this time. Gentlemen, what's your pleasure with these?
I'll make a motion we approve 2018, 18 through 20 appropriation.
Thank you, Mr. Jesse, and Mr. LaBeouf seconds it. Any questions? Betty explained it so well, I don't have any myself. Y'all know. All right, then I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you so much. Now we're going to move to the January meeting date, and okay.
And I put a memo in your packet about that.
Got it.
Matt said that we should have this on the agenda. Typically, your meetings fall on the first Tuesday of every month, which normally would be January the 2nd. The governor has granted an additional holiday to state employees, which in our personnel policy also is granted to county employees. So January 2nd, January the 1st is a holiday that's written in the county's personnel policy, and we also it's also written in our personnel policy that we get additional holidays that are granted by the state. So January the 2nd is a holiday for the county employees. So normally you would shift and have your meetings on the Wednesday after, or the next day after a holiday. So that would be Wednesday, January the 1st. What do you guys want to do with it?
Next day's fine.
Next day, fine?
That would be Wednesday.
All right, Chip, is that a motion?
Make a motion to schedule our January meeting for January 3rd versus January 2nd.
All right, thank you,
And that will be your annual meeting for 2018.
Okay.
And that's the organizational meeting, that's correct.
Your annual organizational meeting to set
Very
the calendar.
good. Do I have a second,
I'll
please?
second it.
All right, thank you, sir. Any further comments at this time? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you all very much. It carries. Moving right along, county administrator items.
Yes, sir. Speaking of the governor, my wife and I had the very distinct honor of participating in a reception at the governor's mansion last night, where the governor invited the cities, counties, and towns of the Commonwealth, VACO, Virginia Association of Counties, and the Virginia Municipal League were present to kind of celebrate their ornaments for the state Christmas tree. Every county, city, or town can submit an ornament for the state Christmas tree. Now, we don't have an official ornament per se, but close to it were the little ornaments several years ago that the rescue squad prepared as a fundraiser. I had an occasion to buy one of those several years ago, so I took that ornament, which actually depicts Middlesex County Courthouse on a little ornament. And it was, the governor put it on the tree himself, and we're very happy to be finally represented on the state Christmas tree with a Christmas ornament. So Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, everyone.
Well, thank you. Okay.
And Christy got to see the governor's mansion, so she was very excited. In your packet, you have a copy of my report. I'll answer any questions you may have. I do want to highlight a couple matters for the board's consideration. First of all is an update on our Central Middlesex Volunteer Rescue Squad. I was able to finally get in touch with the Rescue Squad's treasurer, Miss Cindy Keller. It's come to my attention that Ben Langford, the current president, or the former president, I should say, has resigned his position as president, and I believe Mr. Jim Kelly, who serves as vice president, has assumed his duties. We have, to date, according to Cindy, received an update that they have pretty much covered 5 volunteer shifts with volunteer crews. 5 shifts, I'm assuming she meant November, in the last month. So 5 shifts were covered by volunteer crews at the organization. They are still endeavoring to work towards either repurposing the rescue squad, getting more volunteers, or considering merging or consolidating operations with the Middlesex County Rescue Squad out of Deltaville. No definitive word on that. There are many rumors surrounding a lot of different facets of that are circulating in the community. It's my intention to hold a meeting with Rescue Squad staff next Wednesday at 3 p.m. to discuss what plans they have and potentially move forward. It's my intention to keep the board addressed as I learn more, or keep you appraised as I learn more, and address any matters that need to be after that meeting next Wednesday. I also reached out to Jimmy Ward, who is the attorney for the Rescue Squad, and he's agreed to meet next Wednesday as well to discuss the matter with staff.
That's at 3 p.m.?
Yes, sir. I believe so. We have reached out to the Middlesex County Volunteer Rescue Squad. Mr. Dennis Mann was here tonight, but he had to leave. It's my understanding he's going to invite his attorney to that meeting as well. We're going to try to work through any issues that may arise and try to coordinate a little discussion between the 2 rescue squads. Good. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay, very good.
I've got one quick question.
Yes, sir.
Have a minute, please.
When they said that they ran 5 shifts.
Yes, sir.
Or staff 5 shifts. Would they answer any calls during that time, or?
If no calls for service came in, it's entirely possible that that volunteer crew would have stayed at quarters and not been dispatched out. I'm not aware if they ran any calls. Basically reporting what Cindy Keller had told me was that they had 5 volunteer crews staff shifts.
Okay, but that kind of begs 2 questions. If we only are staffing 5 per month or something like that, which is not an awful lot of shifts.
That's
out of
right.
the month, what is there, 30 times 3? That's only about 5% staffing. So I don't want to use the word not reliable enough to make real decisions based on, but unfortunately it's somewhere in that area. If we still have to go ahead and pay our paid staff to cover that same period. That's correct.
Yes, sir, that is correct. We pay our paid staff through their rescue squad for 24/7 coverage. When the rescue squad has a volunteer crew on, they are extra and over and above what we have staffed, because we want to guarantee 24/7 coverage throughout the response area. We do have an agreement with the rescue squad that if they have a volunteer unit on duty, then they will get first preference on a call, because they're depending on the funds for that volunteer crew if they choose to take a call to help add financial resources to the rescue squad.
Right.
So we defer to them if they have a volunteer crew on duty.
Okay, so it actually ends up costing us a little bit more than normal. Would that be a fair
Well, we're paying for the 24/7 crew regardless of whether they have a shift covered or not. And that's out of previous experience trying to massage the calendars to try to get some feedback and staffing.
A reimbursement from the insurance company would be coming to
If a call was run. Yes, sir. That's correct.
So the net, it's actually costing us more money. And, you know, I know that's a horrible thing to say about volunteer.
Right.
But I'm just trying to get an idea of what financing is.
Well, a couple of things would have to go into effect. If a volunteer crew ran a call and there was insurance billable, I'm assuming they're billing the insurance company. Now, if our crew was to run that same call, then we have an agreement, a former agreement in place, as a matter of fact, where they transfer those revenues to the county because we're actually paying for that crew. If there are billable insurance involved, and that, you know, is determined at the time of the call and billing afterwards.
Right, but the bottom line is, if there's the volunteers in one of the 5 days, one of the 5 shifts, if they do get a call, then, and if that call results in some money, that would be coming back to the rescue squad.
That's correct.
Rather than us,
That's
but we've still got to pay our back.
That's correct. We have a 24/7 coverage at the rescue squad, so our crew is still there on standby for another call. And of course, we have mutual aid agreements in place where Central Middlesex will respond to Middlesex County Rescue Squad calls if needs be, and vice versa. So there is always one rescue squad crew on standby. Well, let me put it this way. There's always one 24/7 crew on duty in the county at all time, at least one. And in many cases, more than one if Middlesex County has their paid crews on.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
What else you got, Matt? Anything?
One couple of quick things. We are still in discussions with Hampton Road Sanitation District on the addendum to the Memorandum of Understanding. Their commission met, and we received an email pretty late in the day, I believe, on the 28th, informing us that their commission wanted the threshold level increased from 10% to 25%, and that was pretty much a must-have from the commission standpoint. And I'll try to explain that briefly. I murdered it last month. Let's see if I can do better this month. What that threshold basically says, that if our conceptual construction cost at this conceptual level, after the PER comes in, if those costs are over 25% more than what the conceptual cost says they would be, then we are only on the hook for half of the study costs if the board chooses not to move forward with a sewer project. If the Board of Supervisors does move forward with a sewer project, Hampton Road Sanitation District covers the cost of the study. Real quickly, as I stated last month, Hampton Road's position has been they are fine with paying for the studies, but they want to make sure the Board of Supervisors are committed to moving forward with the project. And they're willing to concede a little bit, saying, yeah, you know, we think we have a conceptual cost. If those conceptual costs, after the preliminary estimates come in substantially higher, then we'll only request half of the study be reimbursed by the county. And I would add, we've got these study areas broken down into smaller component pieces so the board can choose between which areas of the county and which service areas they would want to pursue first. You have the top 6 in your packet again, and that report's largely redundant from last month with this update.
Okay.
It's going to be my recommendation to the board that you consider the matter in January and hopefully maybe make a decision on which areas, if any, you want to study. And if you have any additional information, let me know so I can request it of Ted Hennepin with Hampton Road Sanitation District.
Okay.
Matt, do the study costs vary kind of in proportion to the estimated project costs?
Based on size and scope of the projects being requested, you'll notice that the topping area has some options. You have different line segments that are optional, and if you choose everything, well, then you have one cost. If you choose just the basic phase one of the service, well, there's a much lower cost. And it's basically based on which option the board would choose and how much sewer you want to study to deploy. Okay. The last thing I had, Mr. Chairman, is you have in your packet the draft of Middlesex County fiscal year 2019 budget development calendar. Every year around November, December, we get the budget. Excuse me?
18.
Well, this is for fiscal year 19.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah. It just, all the work happens in 2018. This is a draft that's based on our current budget development calendar with a couple of minor changes. And one of the primary ones is staff, we're currently recommending that the board consider meeting on January 5th to have kind of a strategic work session to talk about some of the broad strategic goals that the board, once reconstituted after January, would like to pursue. And that could include such things as the Hampton Road Sanitation District studies. The next is we have our normal budget work session kickoff, which is proposed for February 6, 2018. That's pretty much the traditional budget kickoff meeting of the board. One other minor change, you'll notice in the draft calendar, the February 13th meeting, we're preliminarily recommending kind of a hybrid approach to how we did this past year and what we've done before. And that is offer and afford the superintendent of schools ample time to come in and present the budget starting at 4 p.m. And then once complete and questions and work on their budget presentations over, those board members and school board members who wish to stay afterwards could have dinner together. There are 4 potential meetings built into this calendar, as with prior calendars, that are there if needed. If the budget process goes relatively smoothly and you don't need as many work sessions, you don't hold the meetings. It's completely up to the Board of Supervisors on how many meetings you need and how many you'd want to hold. Yes, sir.
Friday, February 9th, I've got in my calendar that the Chairperson's Institute is the 8th and 9th of February.
Yes, sir.
So
Isn't that legislative day in Richmond, the 7th, 8th,
you could potentially
9th?
have 2 people missing.
We need to look into that. We may want to reschedule that one to the Wednesday before that.
Okay, I just...
And the February 9th meeting that Chip is mentioning, that is the typical time period where agencies, organizations, officers, and staff come in and present their budget requests to the board. That meeting could be held earlier in the week if needs be. We can adjust that. I will look into that. Not asking for any action on this draft tonight, just asking for the board to review it. If you have any questions, let us know. I did have a chance and an opportunity to review the draft with Dr. Pete Gretz, who has preliminarily told me there's substantial alignment, and this could very easily become the reconciled budget calendar with the schools process. It looks that it lines up with theirs very well. One conflict that's noted as well, and that is the Thursday, April 19th potential public hearing on the budget. Our county attorney is going to be away at the county attorneys conference, the LGA conference. Heretofore, the county attorneys have not really attended the public hearing, but so much. I know when Mike Severt was here, he didn't. Ms. Heather Lewis likes to, but I wanted to denote that, so that might be something we look at as well. But that potential conflict is noted. Last thing I will mention, this is a draft, and it's completely dependent and determined on the regular meeting schedule y'all adopt and times along with that, and the January organizational meeting, so there may be some adjustments, and I will look into the February 9th potential conflict.
It is February 8th and 9th.
8th and 9th, very good.
Yeah, but if you could if you do change that, if you could set it as soon as possible, because we need to let
the
everyone know,
agencies and
because
staff know.
we've started getting requests from agencies already to be on a schedule.
Does that conclude your report?
No, you still have this. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Mhm.
You still have the-
Oh, yeah, well, that's under old business.
Okay, all right.
Well, if the board's pleasure is to kind of tweak the draft a little bit tonight, if you'd like to consider when you would want to have the agencies come
Who
in.
knows? Okay.
Okay, well, we can go from there. But yeah, that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, very good. County Attorney, do we have any items?
Mr. Chairman, I would just say that, as Mr. Walker reported in his administrative report, the radio project continues to move forward. We had our conference call this morning, and everything's on schedule, and antennas have been installed, and we are moving right along.
Good enough. Thank you so very much. All right, does that conclude the attorney?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it does.
Thank you very much, Madam Attorney. Now we'll go to unfinished and/or new business. We did get we might as well do the unfinished as now with this proposed conveyance of property. Former property, B.W. Miller had Elvis Brady Hummel. What's Grandpa's name doing on this? Okay, who wants to present this?
I can speak to this, Mr. Chairman.
Please do.
And I'll try to be brief. Back in October of 2016, the board authorized Gordon Jones, our local surveyor, to approach VDOT for what amounts to surplus property that was left over after Route 200 was converted into Route 3 Grace Point Road. It has taken some time, but we finally received a response from VDOT, which is at your desks. They have agreed to the fair market value of that property, which according to the letter is $2,618 and approximately 1.2469 acres. And they have said that they would be willing to sell the property to the county as the, I guess, apparent property owner that would be adjacent and would have first right to purchase the property. The board may be familiar with this. The board did give a $500 certified check to VDOT to cover their administrative costs, barring any non-purchase of the property. So what we have is the response from VDOT after quite some time to actually sell the property to the county if we choose. And real quickly, I can show you on Google Earth where the property is. I also pull up the surveyed plat of the property that Mr. Jones had provided the board in the past. This, of course, is Route 3 up in front of the Hummel Field Airport. You can see, you can make out the bed of the old road, old Route 200. You can pretty much make it out. This is the portion of the property referenced in this potential purchase. It's approximately 1.2 acres, and they have agreed to sell it to the county, which owns the property in behind the strip.
That would give us a lot of frontage on that 3, wouldn't it, Matt?
Yes, sir. And that was primarily, that was the primary purpose. We asked Gordon to represent the county on the matter and approach VDOT to purchase the property. It's my understanding that other adjoining property owners, I think the Perkinsons are on that list, have actually purchased some of the residual property in their frontage, or on their frontage. This would allow the county to reserve quite a bit of road frontage to the state. So happy to report to you that we've got a response. It was kind of last minute, included in your packet. I apologize for that. I have instructed Mr. Jones to go ahead and ask VDOT for an extension to their what amounted to 30-day notice on letting them know whether we would move forward with a sale. But if the board cared to make a decision tonight to purchase, that would be welcome.
Matt, with that much extra frontage on the highway, because remember one time we actually rented some lands for Wings and Wheels Day, and that wasn't that piece of property though, was it?
No, sir.
It was down lower than that. Okay, but that would still be a pretty good thing to have for the airport. Chip, What do you think?
I support it. I mean, when the road bed was where it was, we were road frontage. And then
Right.
apparently they bought that right away, and when they moved the road over, then they owned land between us and the highway.
Right.
And I think it's to our advantage to own that.
I do too.
Yeah, it is.
I could make a decision on that tonight. too, if you-
I see no reason to put the staff through asking for an extension
No.
to vote for it in January. I don't see any resistance to it.
If you make a motion.
I would make a motion that we purchase this surplus easement from the Virginia Department of Transportation as outlined in the paperwork that we have here.
I'll second it.
Surplus parcel.
Surplus parcel, pardon me.
All right,
How wide is that?
In some places, it's.
Normally, what is the widest point, and of course, in
I can zoom in a little bit.
54.59.
Yes, 54.59 feet.
54 feet at the widest point.
Yes, sir.
Well, it's 87 at that end.
Yeah, it's 54.
Oh, I'm sorry. You've got
plus
2 points there.
33.
So you've got 54.59 and then
Plus.
33.84.
Oh, yeah.
And then on the other end, I think there's 15 feet and 15 feet.
30,
Okay.
40 some feet.
Down to 30
And that
something.
gives us around 3 right there.
Right.
To our property.
Yes, sir.
All right, gentlemen, I have a motion and a second. Any further questions? If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign, please. Thank you very much. So we put that issue to rest. Okay? Now I'll just go call. Mr. Hope, do you have any new business to bring up?
What we have still Go Virginia.
Under unfinished
Yeah, we'll
business.
do that after.
The resolutions.
We have, that resolution is old business from last month, wasn't it?
Yes.
All right, what do y'all think about the Go Virginia resolution?
There's 2.
I think it's a good resolution, creating jobs and different things like that.
Well, I had conversation with our representative out of Richmond, and he was very persuasive in saying maybe we ought to go with this and try it. What was it, Matt? $5,000 contribution. It puts us at the table.
If all if all the localities choose to participate, and it's my understanding all have, with the exception of us, we tabled it last month.
Right.
There would be a local match requirement of anywhere from $2,600 to $5,000.
5,000 being the top.
5,000 being the top, and they gave a range.
But what that does, so what I was told by Louis, is just puts us in line for the possibility of a grant, not to exceed $3 million, I think, Matt.
Yeah, not to see that. Right, now you're right about that.
Yeah.
But that's only if they
get
get
it.
the grant. See,
Right.
if they don't get the grant, then you're
not
pay
owed
that.
anything.
It's a federal grant. That's
All right.
only if they get the grant.
Sure. All right, gentlemen, and we tabled it so everybody can think it over. I'll go ahead. How do y'all want to dispose of this?
Yeah, hold just a second. If we don't get the grant, we still pay the $2,000.
No.
You pay nothing.
We pay nothing.
You pay nothing.
But if we do get the grant, then we
And
pay
that's
whatever
your
we,
local match.
Local match.
local match, there you go.
Which is 2,000 to 5,000 or
Right.
something.
Right, yes, sir. For our share of the match.
And it could be, do we get a portion? When you talk about the grant, $3 million would, of course, be the best. But is this $3 million, say there is $3 million available, is that divided between all the people that put in money?
I think so, Pete. I think that's the way it's going to work. And because it has all to do with broadband, doesn't it, Matt?
Yes, it does. Yeah, dealing with both, from my understanding, I could be wrong, you correct me.
Well, there are two distinct initiatives.
Right.
Is the $3 million just for the Pamunkey net, or is that for
That's
both?
Pamunkey net.
My understanding is for Pamunkey net.
Okay.
To deploy.
Well, it's not going to go to the districts, it's going to go to the business.
Right. That's
A
what-
monkey.
Yeah, right. That's where it's gonna go to.
All right.
Okay, not to be overly negative, but it goes to the monkey. What do we get out of it?
Access to put I can't, homunculus net, I guess. Where they
Well,
come up with these
well-
names, I don't know. But anyway.
Well, I look at it like this, Pete. It's when it deployed, it goes through the Middle Peninsula. It supports the Middle Peninsula as for jobs. It may even, some people from Middlesex County may have jobs from that. By bringing it in through the Middle Peninsula, it creates job opportunities for different businesses and different things like that. It may be a trickling effect for different citizens to create jobs. But it helps the Middle Peninsula because 7% of the people transport out of the county going to Richmond and different areas. So, you look at it, if somebody can travel from here to West Point or King and Queen, it's going to help. It's going to help the economic environment in the Middle Peninsula.
Go ahead, Chip. I'm
I
sorry.
remembered some conversation last month that this could potentially be competition with what we're trying to do with our broadband authority. We could potentially end up buying the internet from the Pamunkey Indians.
Possibility.
Possibility of it, Chip.
Possibility. Possibility.
Bob, you've been chair of the broadband authority. Interested in your way.
Well, depending upon what we wish to do individually, Pamunkey, think of Pamunkey Net like another MetroCast in the area.
Okay.
Except it'll be run by the Pamunkey tribe and
Right.
presumably will be getting federal funds, which is the whole objective of the exercise.
Yes, sir.
To get federal funds to help set up this quasi-private company to provide internet, which might have some benefits for Middlesex County.
Right.
Other than the benefits that Wayne spoke about a minute ago.
Right.
That is the creation of a business entity that will have all kinds of employment and commercial. But as far as providing internet service to Middlesex, I say we continue with our Middlesex broadband.
Oh,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I'm not saying do away with that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We still
And it could turn out that we don't use Pamunkey Net
Right.
as a service provider if we have our own.
Right.
But on the other hand, there's still reason for us to support it as an economic entity.
Right.
And if I may add, Mr. Chairman, there's nothing to say that we, and I think this was the discussion at the Broadband Authority, that we continue to do our own local examination of how we would want to deploy or solve our broadband internet problems and issues, but then somehow, shape, or form, parallel participate with the regional project just in case there is a scenario where we're walking down parallel paths for a while, but maybe we join that effort if it does get kicked off
And that's a
move
big
forward.
if too, Matt.
It is, and is in all
That's a big
regional
if.
endeavors. If it does, though, it would be my recommendation that we have a seat at that table as well. Any and all options being on the table, we would not want to remove that option for Middlesex County, at least not in the preliminary stages. So that would be my recommendation, that we participate, and if something does develop, then we're in a position where we can utilize that and make some decisions on others.
Now, we have two separate
There are
resolutions.
two. You have Pamunkey Net and the Coastal
All right, so-
Design
So to
Clinic.
resolve the first issue, I move that we accept the Pamunkey Net resolution and become a party to that activity.
All right, do I have a second? All right, Wayne, that's a second. Any further discussion on Pamunkey Net? All right, I'll call.
Yeah, no, I've got a little bit more discussion on it. For Pamunkey Net to help us, other than employment, which I doubt would be a heck of a lot for Middlesex County, we would, they would have to have a fiber optic line come into Middlesex County. Wouldn't that be, they would do wireless or transmit wirelessly?
Don't know what they want to, what they're proposing for Monkey Net, really, Bob. The conveyance.
It's kind of a black box right now. We don't know exactly what it is, but my rationale for supporting it is, let's play nice with our neighbors, be part of the regional effort, and see what comes of it. It's going to go forward whether we participate or not, but as Matt said, better to have a seat at the table at this point. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't cost us anything.
Right.
If it does happen, it may cost us a couple $1,000s, but there may be real benefits at that point.
Okay, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't cost us anything.
We've lost
No, not a penny.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was under the impression that if it didn't happen.
No, we don't give $5,000 and don't get something back.
Well, I wasn't quite sure.
Well, because I made quite sure that's the way. Because Pete, I'm kind of like you. I was kind of asking the question, the Pamunkey tribe, now that they have their federal designation, they really don't fall under too many local governmental controls. I may be wrong on this. I don't know about Indian tribal law or anything, but you know, they don't have to answer to a whole lot of
Well, the real appeal to this, there's always been the appeal of a regional broadband system.
Right.
And the real appeal, and what I think Keith Hodges is responding to, is the potential availability of funds simply because we're working with an Indian tribe.
Right.
That opens up a whole treasure trove of federal dollars that we haven't had access to previously. Now, whether it actually turns out that way is very much in question.
Because the chief is our representative at the Planning District Commission.
Well, Matt and I spoke with him at the meeting that Rob Whitman held on broadband last month, and he definitely had his doubts about where this was going.
Right.
But it's worth a seat at the table for now.
Sure. All right, gentlemen, any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of Pamunkey Net, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, it carries now. The second part.
That was the coastal design.
But you have a second resolution in your packet on the Sea Grant College. And I think what they're proposing, and this was another proposal from the MPA, a Rural Coastal Design Institute.
Rural Coastal Design Entity.
And the depiction of what that is, or the description of what that is in your packet.
The last meeting I was there, I don't even think we even just.
I think they discussed it prior to that, but it's I guess attracting high-paying jobs in the Middle Peninsula, basically. Ways of attracting high-paying jobs through the coastal design. Coastal
How much does that
Institute
cost us? Anything?
Well,
I don't think, does it?
I don't think that.
It doesn't really say.
That don't really cost. I don't think it costs anything.
Well, now this one potentially has more cost associated with than the other, but I'm just looking for where the costs are.
Go Virginia, both for Rural Coastal Design Institute.
Yeah.
If you look at your cover memo from November 15th from Travis Mikowski, the chairman of the MPA.
Page 330.
In page 331. I believe it's valued at $2,496. That's the estimate.
331.
331.
That would be our contribution, Matt?
Well, it says, it's a little confusing. It says, as an in-kind match for this project, valued at $2,496.
An in-kind match for this project value $24.96 for the work of Virginia Sea Grant College on this project.
Yeah, they were local.
Matt, where did you find those numbers?
I just found it on.
331.
331 right here, Bob.
The MPA correspondence from
$2,496.
Yeah, from November 15th, 2017.
Because everything you do with Go Virginia, you got to put up money for. I thought it was to be some type of economic engine, but
My reading was that it's basically a grant to local universities to study the creation of new industries focused on the water. Now, that was my reading, and I'm not sure whether I got it 100%. There's a lot of fluff in here, talking about Louisiana and other, but it sounds like they want a study program for local universities to come up with new industries for our area. Yeah.
I have a real problem with this, gentlemen. Sea Grant has always been out there trying to enhance the seafood industry in this type. That's why I call it Sea Grant. Well, what university? So now you're talking like William and Mary and these type people. I don't know. I just got. All right, gentlemen, how do y'all want to dispose of this one?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just wanted to clarify, I apologize. I was reading this, page 332 is in your board packet. It's from it's to the county administrators from Travis, the chairman. You might want to look over that just briefly. It looks like it might address some of your questions.
That was the same information we had last week.
Okay.
Well, is this still going through the Pamunkey tribe?
The Rural Coastal Design Institute is the other one, Jack.
I think we still need to have it.
Well, I was trying to see if I could find you a little more info. That's all I have from my back.
And that was the information in the packet last month. That's the cover letter going with both projects.
Just as confusing as wood.
I still think we should have.
Well, here again.
I think we still should have a place to table on that. I think we will for 2000.
We'll just table it?
No, I'm not table it, but I think we still should have a representative on that.
Well, and it does talk about a grant as well. So
yeah, I think it still should have some plate of that.
Same thing.
I think we should.
I can speak to.
Go ahead and do that.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just add real quickly, when we were in the process of creating the MPA, which it's the Middle Peninsula Alliance, I believe it is. The mayors and chairs met just about every month, and we were trying to form this. One of the things that we advocated for was combined projects where the entire region had skin in the game.
Right.
And these two projects apparently are the result of the MPA's process to develop those types of projects. So they're basically trying to give us what we've asked for.
Okay. All right, gentlemen,
I move we approve the Rural Coastal Design Institute project.
All right, do I have a second?
A second.
All right. Okay, any further comments at this time? I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Now, does that take care of Go Virginia for now?
I think that takes care
I
of it.
hope so.
Enough on it.
We've had enough on it. All right. Chip, do you have any new business to bring up at this time?
No, sir.
Mr. LaBeouf?
No, sir.
I don't. Wayne? Pete?
New business?
Yes.
No.
Okay, very good. And any old business? No, I don't. We covered that. All right. Now we'll go ahead with matters. Oh, you got something? All right. What's that on the old or new?
Old. By the way, I don't recall you calling for old business. I want to go back to to our purchase order to one of the engineering companies for the Woodward elevator.
Okay.
It's my understanding that that was written in two parts. Is that correct? They're going to look at it and see what they think can be done, and that was to cost about $5,000, and then they were to make the design after that.
I would have to go back and pull the actual agreement. I don't recall, but.
And there was I don't recall that exactly, but my recollection is pretty close to yours. Also in that figure was the oversight, like an architect would oversight a project to make sure that the individual contractors are doing what they're supposed to do. So it wasn't just to design and say, here's an elevator and here's what I'm going to charge you for it. It followed you all the way to when you got the keys.
Right, but that would be in the second part of.
That's my understanding.
Of the contract.
But I'd have to go back and look at it to be sure.
Can we make sure that, first of all, let's say we're not happy with the placement or we're not happy with something about it. At that time, at the $5,000 level, do we have the right to stop this contract?
I don't know about stopping the contract. We'd have to look in that. I think we would have a considerable amount of input into the process. So if they, in your scenario, found a location that the board and staff were not comfortable with, we could ask them to revisit their location recommendation to that effect.
Right.
But I'd have to go back and review the agreement.
But that agreement has already been approved, hasn't it?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I'm trying to find out. First of all, I certainly don't want to pass the 5,000 mark without us being able to take a look at where we stand. And if at that time we don't vote to go ahead with the elevator project, it seems quite ridiculous that we would want to design the building for them.
As I remember the contract, it was broken down into segments. There was a certain amount for writing the bid requests and a certain amount for analyzing the bid requests that come back in, a certain amount for oversighting the project. So it's in a lot of pieces, and it stands to reason to me that if the pieces don't occur, we would have a strong position for not paying for it.
Yeah, just having a sidebar with the county attorney, we can pull the agreement and look into that specific question and get you an answer.
Okay.
Okay.
If that, yes, okay.
All right, gentlemen, let's go ahead. Meeting attendant, what you need?
Nope, never mind, you're right, Mr. Chairman. Nope, you're fine. My apologies.
Meeting attendance.
I had the pleasure of attending the Veterans Day luncheon at Christ Church Church, which was a very nice function. We've had an airport committee meeting and a joint budget and finance meeting. And this is really not Board of Supervisors business, but after my 2 Santa appearances at the museum, I'll probably be a little neater trimmed the next time you see me.
Oh, you look like ZZ Top now, man. Don't turn that beard off. It looks grand. All right, Mr. LaBeouf.
Nothing to report.
Absolutely. Mr. J.
Veterans Day program here at the courthouse, that went really well. Jack did an excellent job.
Thank you,
Had
sir.
great attendance. Also attended the VACO convention. Everything went real well with that. I did get some information from the vendors about updating codes and different things for counties. I gave that to Heather so she can look at it, because it's a program and different things that you can do to update your county codes to keep them in compliance. And also, Sharon Alsop it's going to be the VACO president. We voted her in. And naturally, she's from King and Queen County.
Right.
The supervisor ahead of her lost his election, so that's why they moved her on up. So that was good to have someone local on that. Also, there's another vendor up there, since y'all somebody was talking about solar, is Sun Tribe Solar, which is out of Charlottesville. They had the information with Middlesex Public Schools, about the solar situation that they're going to have there. And there will be over a 25-year period savings of 2.5 million, which is, if you look at it, that's not telling people that you're going to go off the grid. It's saving the carbon fossil footprint. You don't have to spend on coal and gas. That's 25 years of not using that up. So you think about it. That's just from the solar. So they had a presentation up there. Middlesex County. So I did see that. I did attend. It was the rural. It was a rural caucus there, and it was Delegate Ball. She was talking about there was going to be, the last 3 times through legislation it failed, about local government people running, choosing parties, and as local, we don't look at parties, we look at citizens in the community. That's what we look at. And I'm glad that, I hope that don't go through, but it's failed 3 times, and she was talking about, I hope it fail again. And also, there was, let me see, I think that was, anything else? Connecting counties. I did attend one of those workshops on that, and that was dealing with broadband too. But all the monies and funds of that is out in Western Virginia. We don't have anything, in this area other than, if Pomonkey that comes through. I mean, then we would have something, but there's no grant money or anything for broadband or anything that's out there, as you know, right? And that was it for my committee reports.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Mansfield, any report?
I want to talk about landfill just for a moment. Two things. Number one, I understand that there is a chance that not only the antioxidant idea, actually we're working with antioxidant right now. We're taking air out of the underground. Resource was talking about oxidizing it, or actually blowing air into it to hopefully oxidize the metals and other chemicals. But I understand that there's a chance that we may be able to get out of monitoring, which would be a heck of a savings for us. If we did get out of, there would be also a very good chance that whole area would be great for a solar farm. And if we can do the solar farm in the same way that we did the school system, there would be no cost to us. And again, you just saw a $2 million possible savings with what we did with the school. If we could get a $2 million savings and there's more land in the landfill, which cannot be developed for anything else for probably 200 years anyway. There are several landfills which are being converted to solar areas with, again, quite a bit of savings.
Are they here in Virginia?
Jack, I really don't recall.
Yeah. Because I tell you what, knowing DEQ, if you tried to sink a pole down the hole of solar collector, they'd come screaming and hollering over Richmond like you getting ready to end all time, man. I'd be very, very careful around DEQ trying to do anything. If they said y'all are out of it, let a sleeping dog lie right down there and storm on. Just don't do anything with it. Just forget about it. Chain the gate, goodbye, and come on home. So.
Well, what I'd like to do is find out about those two things. Number one, if we can get out of it, that would be the gigantic movement. And I'd like to work with Matt and et cetera to see what we can do about that. And then we'll talk about solar as adjunct.
Okay. Well, I look at it, anytime you can put a park over top of old landfill, it look like you can put a few poles in there on it. I mean, that one in Virginia Beach.
Mount Trashmore.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm
so,
talking
you know, you got kids running around there and you got playgrounds and stuff in the ground. I can't see where
solar panels.
Put some solar
Who
panels
knows?
on something that can generate some energy.
We know who we're dealing with, Wayne.
And Mr. Chairman, it is my understanding that they're exploring an opportunity in Albemarle County to do some kind of solar project on top of a landfill. That's my understanding.
We'll see how that pans out. Okay. All right, I have a report to make. Like I said, Veterans Day was very nice. The participation was grand. Speaker was good. The band was good.
The band was good, right?
The band was all right. I was just real proud of all the participants. And then I went to my PDC meeting, and everything went well there. And I think we did all right, Wayne. We got a monkey net explained to us and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, that's my report for that. And that concludes the matters presented by the board. And at this time, it's what time back? 5:30?
Yes, sir.
I'll go ahead and call for recess. We'll reconvene at 7 p.m. So let's all go get a bite to eat. Right on schedule. Right on schedule. Right on schedule. So here.
Tight ship.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call this meeting back into order, please, for our evening meeting. Tonight we have two public hearings, one for special exception 2017-04 and the public nudity ordinance. So at this time, I'll turn it over to our planner, and let's go first with the special exception 2017-04. Dave, you've got the floor.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is our first item of business is one little thing this is a requirement that state code or ordinance requires that we just notify the board that the same application that we're hearing tonight was also submitted as a comp plan confirmation or what they call substantial accordance with the comp plan. It is required by state code. Our requirement is that we notify the board. It's been it's depicted in your board packets and here. So basically we followed state code and we've notified you guys on it. The planning commission did find that it was compliant with the comp plan, so we can move forward with that. Yes, sir, this is special exception 2017-04, and it's submitted by Churchview Solar. The request is for a special exception to allow a utility scale solar facility to be located on approximately 535 acres in the two districts being low density rural and resource husbandry. And this property is generally situated near Route 17 and Waresbridge Road. And it's noted as parcels 1220, 1221, and 1222 in the Jamaica district. A little narrative. There really isn't a property address. It does contain two zoning districts, as I just noted. The current land use is agricultural and forestry, and the comp plan listed as agricultural conservation. Of course, most of the adjoining properties have similar uses. Residential uses are present to the east of the project along Route 17 and to the south of Waresbridge Road. and adjacent to the southwest portion of the property. This is where the property is located. It's, of course, as I just mentioned, mainly on Wares Bridge Road. There's a small entrance that one parcel, 12-21, I believe, is actually shifted in our GIS. I believe it's actually contiguous with our parcel and be used for ingress egress. And of course, this gives you an overview of what the properties look like now. Part of it's farmed and part of it's forestry. And there's depicts the split zoning. Part of it's RH and part of it's low density rural. And the comp plan lists most of this area as agricultural conservation. These were submitted with, oh, pardon me.
Excuse me, where is 1221?
1221, I'm going to put the laser pointer because I don't know if you.
Sure.
If you see it, it's shifted down here, but I believe the actual location is going to be up here. It's contiguous with that parcel because they're going to use it mainly as.
But a relatively small parcel.
It's a very small parcel, just a small triangle. So the majority of the project is contained within these two larger parcels right here. This is information. You can see that the applicants already, their consultants already engaged in this project. They've done environmental assessments, and you can see they have some site plan work done already. This is basically how the project will lay out. You can see that these are the panel locations. They're located well from the right-of-way of Route 17 and, of course, Wares Bridge Road. This is an extra supplemental drawing that they've included in this package. It's to indicate distances off Wares Bridge Road that associate with a request for an exception to one of the requirements. This can be brought back later. And of course, these particular requests are special exception requirements per these sections of the ordinance. Special exception criteria, I'm going to run through these. Staff has looked at most of these. Any of these items that aren't addressed definitively at this point can be, we're going to have a site plan process that we can look at these a little bit tighter then. Anything that's in this package will, of course, be conditioned to, they have to follow the special exception criteria once they get to that point. So I'm just going to go through these. I know there's a lot of information. It deals with two different districts, so I'm going to kind of go through it quickly. Number one, staff feels that complies. It seems to, appears to comply. Number two, staff concurs that complies. Of course, number three is just a condition, special exception condition. This is one of general interest. It deals with noise, smoke, fumes, glare, traffic, or fire hazards. I think we've had a lot of discussions. These panels do not produce smoke or fumes or anything that's objectionable. In addition to those requirements, we also have these additional requirements that were added as the additional language into the special exception requirements for these solar utility scale solar facilities. A deals with signage. No signage is proposed at this time, so and there again we can deal with that that's a very minor issue that could be dealt with at the time. No aspect of the solar facility shall exceed 25 feet in height. These are well below that. It's commented that they're 13 feet, so we have no issue with height. They're FAA requirements. We have to ensure the structural integrity of the infrastructure. That they should be maintained in compliance with the standards of all applicable local, state, and federal building codes. That will be taken care of at that time too. Security fencing, that's obviously it's noted in the booklet and it's taken care of. Lighting shall be the minimum necessary for safety and security purposes. Staff complies with that, feels it complies. Applicants for new solar facility utility scale projects shall coordinate with the county emergency services staff. That's just going to be made a condition of approval as well. That would be up to the developer or the owner to get with our EMS people to make sure that they know what's going on. This deals with if the solar facility is inactive completely or substantially discontinued, the delivery of electricity to an electrical grid for continuous 24-month period, it shall be considered abandoned. Then basically you have decommissioning at that point. And there's detail in that booklet on decommissioning as well. Of course, this deals with decommissioning as well. That's detailed in the booklet. This deals with the building permit shall be obtained within 5 years of obtaining special exception. That's just going to be it's a condition of the approval. This deals with the pile driving activities, construction activities. They do give a narrative, and the operational parameters are provided in the submitted narrative. We've gone through that and discussed that through some of the other meetings, so we feel we can deal with that at the site plan and as needed. They do have an exception for Sunday that we would adhere to the criteria that's contained there. A minimum of 150-foot setback shall be maintained from solar equipment to adjacent residential buildings. That certainly appears as if it complies. It's well from any actual building. Minimum 50-foot setback from solar equipment to the property line and 60 feet from any public right-of-ways. That appears to apply as well. That's compliant. In setback areas where there is not at least 15 feet of native timber remaining, it goes through this. I'll go into this a little bit more detail in the next district. They have a request for an exception to this, but it doesn't apply on the parcel that's resource husbandry. So I'm going to, on this parcel, it actually complies because they're not asking for it. And then we have access roads are to be marked with identifying signage. Signage information is not found in the narrative, but that can be addressed at site plan. Solar panels, we use non-concentrating anti-reflective coatings. I think that's more of an industry standard now, but that'll be a condition as well. Of course, we have any other conditions added by the Board of Supervisors. We move on to our low-density rural items, and these are basically the same. I'm just going to go through these because they're identical to the last item. So I'm just going to kind of move through these quickly. Some of these are standard special exception criteria that's indigenous, I guess, to the LDR. Staff feels that all of these are the standard things like noise, smoke, fume, glare. They, of course, have been addressed, and we've talked about that previously. Of course, then we have the additional requirements that are were added as a result of the ordinance amendment. Of course, they talk about the signage, and I'm not going to go through these because these are, like I said, identical. I will move to item N, and I'm going to read this out so everybody can understand it. So in setback areas where there is not at least 15 feet of native timber remaining on the project parcel, a single row of evergreens will be planted within the setback. Such evergreens shall be planted on 15-foot centers with rows offset and shall be Myers spruce, eastern cedar, or similar tree, which alternative tree may be subject to the prior written approval of the Director of Planning and Zoning. That meaning I might have some flexibility with the specifications of the tree or the species. And the evergreen installed shall have an anticipated 5-year height of 6 to 8 feet after planting and an anticipated maturity height of 30 to 40 feet. These evergreens shall be planted during the appropriate time of year subsequent to the completion of construction. This requirement may be reduced or waived if agreed to in writing by the owner of the adjacent residence, including residences across a public right-of-way. Yes, sir, Mr. Ball.
A single row of evergreens with rows offset. There appears to be a bit of a contradiction. First sentence. A single row of evergreens will be planted within the setback. Such evergreens shall be planted on 15-foot centers with rows offset. But there'll only be one row?
Well, they would be staggered.
That's offset.
That's the way you would want them.
Yeah, but the stacking only is beneficial if you have multiple rows. There's no point served in stacking a single row.
Well, you would switch them back. You could run them.
I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah.
It effectively makes 2 rows on 30-foot centers, is the way I think.
In essence, yeah, you're staggering those rows to create an alternating. It actually adds a little thickness.
Well, it does say a single row.
Sure does.
Does the row have to be straight? I mean, it could, I guess they're,
but I'm just pointing to the consistency. A single row of evergreens with rows offset. That's inconsistent.
I think a better way of saying it would be a double row of evergreens.
But then that's 2 rows.
Then there's 2 rows, so you go back up.
And I'm not, I don't care which way it is, but fix the language so it's
well,
consistent.
and believe me, we may go back and look at some of this when we start talking about some more of this. I'm going to go into a little bit more conversation about the whole package with where we might want to be and where we might want to look at some of these, and I'll give you some background on a little bit more on this.
And Dave, just real quick before we leave that subject, wasn't the bulk of this ordinance kind of given to us in draft form by the industry?
It was, absolutely. Now, this did go through ordinance committee and it went through the planning commission. Of course, it's been vetted through the board of supervisors, so we've all looked at this. My interpretation, it would just be a row that would be more or less sinuous, that would create some side, it wouldn't be so stark looking. That would be my interpretation of how to do this. Somebody else may interpret it something else.
My way of reading is that there are 2 rows, and the front row is 15 feet off of the road or whatever it's, and then the second row is 15 feet back from that.
Well,
and staggered from the first row is the way I would interpret that.
Okay.
If the intention was to have a single row, simply change with rows offset, delete that, because you can't offset one row.
This is true.
Right. Well, it does say 1 row, so.
Yeah. Just a
Okay,
little,
Dave.
just a little.
Yeah, well, I will continue. So, anyway, what we have in this particular situation is we have an applicant that has requested that we eliminate this requirement due to the excessive distance off the right-of-way. The right-of-way, the structures themselves or the panels themselves will be in excess of 500 feet. So they're asking for a relief for not having to put these in this particular area due to the large distance, and they'll speak on their behalf. It's my determination as a planning director that it's pretty plain at the end that you have to have at least a joint property owner agreement in this. And to date, I have not gotten any agreement. So from an ordinance standpoint, I don't think we can eliminate this or grant this particular request to eliminate or reduce this particular ordinance requirement. I believe the ordinance needs to stand with some type of screening or planning in place for the ordinance. I would be hesitant to back out of that. The ordinance does give relief if there is property owner cooperation with it and agreement. The things I was talking about briefly, and we kind of started talking about this, evidently there seems to be a tremendous amount of cost involved with this screening that these developers are having to put in to screen these solar panels. We've already gotten, the Planning Commission will hear next week a request by Dominion Power on the parcel that's in Hartfield. And we've already gotten feedback from Dominion Power asking for some type of, the same type of request, some type of exemption or reduction in the requirement to put plantings in. Now, we have two different processes here. One of them, we have a special exception process here, which is a slightly different process. The other project was determined to be by right, so we channeled that through a standard process. We're not running them through the special exception process because they were quick to assert their vested rights in that by right determination, so we're running them through a standard site plan process. Of course, a lot of the site plan items are not going to be triggered in this type of application. I mean, there's very little lighting and parking's not an issue and that type of thing. But the main thing that comes up is landscaping. In that particular case, I tried to use the analogy to the Dominion Power. If you live next door to a Walmart, and Walmart, their argument was the adjoining owners had woods and vegetation on their property. If Walmart was building next to you, would you want them to use your property and your woods as their screening? And I think most people's answer would probably be no. So that being said, pardon me?
Does the 15 feet of native timber not cover the screening requirement for all of that property?
I don't believe there's any alongside, any on the...
oh, it's an open field?
Open field along Ware's Bridge. So it would be visible. So what we have here is a different situation than Dominion Power will have in the application that'll go to the Planning Commission. In that case, the standard landscaping ordinance dictates a mixture of deciduous trees and evergreens, and is not really intended to screen necessarily. It's more of an effect to try to help, blend in and somewhat hide the use, but just to enhance the property. In this case, there's more of a screening component to hide it from another piece of property. So in the case of the site plan approval, the Planning Commission will most probably allow Dominion Power to reduce their requirement for tall deciduous trees in lieu of evergreen type trees. But it may not have the intensity that this particular project does just by virtue of the ordinance.
Didn't you and Matt say that this is sort of boilerplate, that this is the way it's handled in other areas?
This ordinance is, I've spoken with several counties. Essex, my understanding is they basically funneled it through almost a by right situation. I'm not sure exactly how it didn't go through the processes
I'm
that we
speaking
have.
of the 15 feet and the native timber. Isn't that sort of industry boilerplate if you were building one in North Carolina?
I think that appears to be pretty standard. Every county tweaks it a little bit here and there, and that's something we may look at in the future as to do we want to revise this ordinance to accommodate us or to accommodate them a little bit more because of the astronomical cost of doing it. That's what their argument tonight will be, and Dominion Powers is that it's extremely expensive to do this, and as a community, you have to kind of judge where do you want to be. Do you want to be over onerous to any industry, or do you want to, have to balance out what we have to look at and what an industry has to do? So, but in this case, to me, this is just ordinance, cut and dry. It doesn't meet the ordinance because they don't have the signatures. So does anybody else have any questions on this?
Move along.
Thank you, sir. Of course, I've stated my comment there. The rest of these we can deal with at site plan approval. These are the same things we went through before. Here's the board requirements for the special exception, 1 through 9. They're in your board packet. They're all taken care of. Staff feels that they comply with the requirements that the board needs. Of course, based on this analysis, we have also some other entities that would be involved, VDOT, DQ, Health Department. We would just run it by them. Of course, you have lighting requirements. When the Planning Commission at the time of the meeting, there were 3 staff comments and 3 recommendations from staff. The Planning Commission accepted those 3 from staff, but due to the late time that the information was given to the Planning Commission, they have a ongoing policy that they don't act on information that was submitted to them at the last minute. So this was the information that was submitted at the last minute to the Planning Commission and has been in your board packet. Staff pretty much concurs with all of this. These are just additional requirements that the applicant has placed on themselves, and staff concurs with it. The only exception I have is with 8, because I've determined that it doesn't meet the ordinance. I've recommended that staff recommend the approval of the special exception as submitted, along with conditions 1 through 7 as presented in the report, with the board deleting condition number 8. And that concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
That's your presentation, all right, Dave?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Now the applicants, are they ready to make their presentation? Yes, sir. Please come forward, state your name, and we'll go from there.
Matthew Mears, Henrico County. All right. So, nice to see y'all again. I'm going to go through the first couple slides fairly quickly because they're very similar to what you saw back in August when we did the zoning approval. Only one I'll highlight here is we have now received actually 10 local zoning approvals, and we actually have 97 megawatts actually in operation versus what we presented to you back in August. You know, nothing else has changed. We still develop utility scale solar projects, and we have still done a number of them throughout the state now, as I said, with 10 approved permits. Here, I just want to highlight that on the last point, that we have seen an increase in demand even since we talked to you in August. You know, Facebook announcing they were going to do a solar project or a data center in Henrico County, and they have requested that all the power come from solar power. So this is just showing more and more people asking for solar power in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And there was an RFP that Dominion ran that ended last week asking for bids for solar power in the Commonwealth of Virginia. While we're here, available infrastructure, there actually are good natural buffers in general, and it was a known permitting process. So I want to stop here for 1 second. Very importantly, we had a public meeting, and it was very important that you guys pass item number 6 that we requested, because item number 6 effectively restricts us to only using the area in blue. I want this because I know there were individuals who were at that public meeting who heard me say that, and I want to be restricted to what I said in the public meeting. And I think that's just very important. So as staff did agree with me that they don't mind us restricting ourselves, so I would hope that you would include that, because the effect of it is it does restrict us to only using the area on this map highlighted in blue. That's 306 acres of the total parcel size of 535, and we don't think we're going to even need that. As our design on the next page shows, we don't think we're even going to need that. I'm going to spend actually the entire rest of the time talking about item number 8, because these all the slides were pretty much the same as what you saw back in August. I will say we did do an analysis of how this project would impact adjacent landowner values. It basically said they would not affect it. Again, as long as we were more than 150 feet away from any adjacent residents, that's in your ordinance. Economically, you know, it's going to be about 270 jobs when we have peak labor on the site, and that's what we've seen in the other counties, the projects we just finished. The rollback taxes will be about $8,000, and it'll increase the real estate taxes by about $1,300. There'll be no burdens on the county, and we've, as required, we'll be providing training to the fire department. And I'll just say that on that slide, it was just there's environmental benefits to generating power from solar. So we agree with the staff completely, except for the addition. They prefer to delete number 8. We prefer to keep it, and now I'm going to give you why we would prefer to keep it. Basically, the short answer is we've only ever asked for this. As I said, we've gotten 10 permits approved. We've only ever asked for this one other time down in Sussex County. We did get it down there, and I copied the 200 feet from that county. And I'll be honest, when I did the zoning ordinance, when we proposed it here, I just didn't copy that particular ordinance because it very, very rarely happens that we have such a long distance. We just don't, it comes down to, we would just prefer not to plant a bunch of trees in the middle of a farm field is really what it comes down to us. I will say as we had the other map drawn up, there's nothing special about 200 feet. If you guys feel that a larger distance, say 300, 400, even 500 is a more appropriate distance, we're open to that. That works for us. We just want there to be some distance where, if we're 600 feet away, can we just have relief from that particular clause? And that's what we're looking for.
Can you go back to the map, please, and kind of highlight the area that we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Please.
There we go.
Yep. So it's this area right along Wares Bridge Road is the one place where we're kind of asking for this exception. Because it is completely an open field. You can kind of tell from the topo lines, at least in this area, it's actually really high against the road and drops off, so the topography helps us a little bit. Unfortunately, the rest of it is pretty much flat. So what we're talking about is just we would like, if we're, Dave's map actually had it on, the distances on there, but if we're some distance away from Wares Bridge Road, we would like to not have to plant trees. This particular design, we're, as you can tell, way more than 200 feet away. We're way far away. So we're just looking for some relief at some distance that you guys would be comfortable with. Actually, my next slides, I have a series of photos. We've had this discussion before in slightly different circumstances, but a series of photos taken from one of our other projects. Showing, this is just my documentation. This was all taken in our Scott 1 project in Powhatan County. I took them earlier this year. I took them at eye level, and I tried to stay at the same elevation, but when you're walking across ground, that's kind of hard. So basically, this shows you the fence, the solar panels, and then I took a series of photos every 50 feet, going from 50 feet out to 300 feet. I stopped at 300 because that's as far as I could walk. This is 50 feet. Obviously, if we were this close, we're going to have trees. We agree with that. 100 feet. Now we're at 150. 200 feet. This is where we asked for it. That if we were this distance away, that we would be, wouldn't have to plant trees. But then we have 250 and 300. I stopped at 300 because, frankly, I couldn't walk any further, and that's also the length of my tape measure. So I just wanted to show you these pictures. Yes, sir.
The ground that the tape measure is going over top of, isn't that, are you going to just cut grass there? Are you going to allow that to grow up, or what are you going to do?
On this site, it's just going to be grass. On here in Churchview, it's still going to be the farmers, and I assume he's going to continue farming it. So it'll be planted in crops. Obviously, if it's corn, you're not going to see anything, but if it's soybeans or something else, they don't grow up that high. Yeah. So with that, I'm happy to address any other questions that you may have.
Yeah, did anybody talk to with the ordinance surrounding landowners and see how they felt about it? Did anybody go talk to them?
We've sent out, we had a public meeting, which is to your point. We invited all the adjacent landowners all the way around. We sent them mailers a week and a half ahead of time. Actually followed your same county rules that you do for public notice for, say, this meeting. and we had it at the American Legion post right up the road here. We had 2 individuals show up. I think the most important part was, one, this restriction of only using the 306 acres out of the whole 535. That was very important. And I think the other comment we heard, which was there was a lot of concern about additional traffic on Wares Bridge Road, and that's why we have the whole requirement of having the VDOT traffic management plan in there, so that if there are any issues with the road, we can fix them and address them. There were no specific conversation about the offset, to answer your question, but we did ask all neighbors and give them the opportunity to come address any concerns they had with us.
How much more additional traffic? You won't have any employees.
That's correct. During construction, I mean, our intention of the whole reason we have that one little parcel that was hard to find, that's nothing more than a driveway, and we hope to be able to access, and so almost all of our traffic will be coming directly off Tappahannock Highway during construction. After construction, there's going to be somebody going out there once or twice a month. That's it. Yeah. So the concern was during construction. But we're hopefully that it'll all come off Tappahannock Highway, and very little, if none, will come off of Wares Bridge Road, because I mean it is a relatively small, windy road.
How long do you think it's going to take to complete the project from raw field right to getting your solar panels up and going?
Oh, that's an easy question. We just completed 4 projects here in the state. All of them started construction towards the end of April to mid-May. So if you go May, June, July, August, September, October, November, 7 months is how long. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. So that's how long all the projects we built this year. I can tell you we do have another project under construction. It's going on a very relaxed schedule, in the sense that it started construction here in October, this past October, and it doesn't have to be done until December of next year. So that's a very long, drawn-out process, but that's done just, the reality is it'll probably be finished sometime in May or June. They want to build in the winter.
Okay. Is it fair to ask what the estimated cost of not having number 8 is to you? If it's not fair to ask.
I mean, I'll answer the question. I really don't care. I mean, I would say the concern for what we have proposed, well, I haven't measured the exact distances. In King William County, where it's probably the most similar to this, it cost us about $13,000. The concern is just as much the risk, because, that thing basically says if they die, I mean, the way the ordinance reads is if they die, we have to go out there and replant them. And there's always a concern about trees dying. I mean, that's kind of, it's the risk as much as the cost. I mean, that cost is not going to, to be quite frank, the cost will not decide whether this project happens.
These panels are how tall? 13 feet, did you say? 12?
At the highest point, because these will rotate during the course of the day, so at their highest point, they will be at 13 feet. That's correct, sir.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes. I'm sorry.
Sir, wasn't this part of the ordinance that you actually presented to the ordinance committee? This is in fact your own condition you're now asking this board to not make you comply with? Can you explain?
It was exactly as I said, it started out with, is that I did not, it's such an infrequent occurrence, I simply forgot to put it in there. I mean, as I said, we had it in Sussex County. Out of the 10 permits I've gotten, it's come up once before. So it's just something that doesn't come up very often. And to be honest, I hadn't even done the site plans when we did that. So I didn't even know I wanted that. So you're correct. It's all my fault in the end.
No, I wasn't doing it to point that out, but just to point out this is the language, and maybe there was something additional that came up. And also, on these presentations you're presenting, they're only conceptual at this time, which means that they could be, as long as they don't exceed the blue area, they could in fact be closer to that line.
Yeah, and then we would have to put them. I mean,
do you mind pulling that map back up so we can just see that? I think that's an important fact.
Yeah, I mean, if we're less than whatever threshold you establish, we have to plant the trees. That's how we've proposed it. I mean, this is only if we are more than this distance away, we would be exempt. Okay. But if we're less, we still have to plant trees. We accept that. I mean, that's how it was drafted.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. All right, Mr. LeBeau?
Yes, if you were to have to plant, it would be along the road, would it not? Along the edge of the property? And all you'd be screening is a crop.
In essence, yes, but what we normally do is we actually end up planting closer to the solar panels, just as that's the practical way of doing it.
Outside the fence? Just outside?
Yeah, just outside the fence, because I mean that's what we want to shelter is the fence. So
Sure.
you know, we plant just outside the fence, and even more than that, the landowner really doesn't want us to have a tree easement against the road and then have a fence, you know, way far away.
Right.
So the short answer is yes, that we plant them right against the fence. Is how we would do it as a practical answer.
Thank you.
If you plant these trees and they go up to 40 feet, and you have them inside the fence, what happens when shadows start? A 40-foot tree puts out a pretty good sized shadow.
Yes, that's a brilliant question. Yes, you're quite correct. In general, you would want to offset roughly 150 feet. The benefit of using red cedars and the Myers, Myers spruce, we prefer the eastern red cedar, it's actually a type of tree that you can cap at a certain height. So what we would eventually do is once it got high, and in this case, we really want them to grow out more than we want them to really grow up. We would go back and cap them once they've gotten to say 20 feet or so. Just like you see under power lines, you would cap it, and then they don't grow up in the power lines; they just kind of grow out. That's what, as a practical answer, is what we would end up doing, because they would be meeting the functionality of screening by being 15, 20 feet high. But yes, if we were to let them grow to say a pine tree, which is what we are normally dealing with, a pine tree can grow to about 80 foot,
right,
and we need to be offset roughly twice the height of the tree.
So it'd be 160 feet.
Yeah, and we just use 150 because it's easier. But yes, that's right.
Because I tell you what, I've been on the planning commission all a long time, and nothing looks prettier than a Leland cypress, but nothing looks uglier than a dead Leland cypress right in the middle of 10 of them. You got one on at number 5 position, dead as a hammer, and it just looks like a rotten tooth or something sitting there. So I'm always trying to encourage indigenous species as screening, because it just looks like to me it does better, but that's my opinion.
That was brought up in the planning commission, and why we was both recommended to us by the planning commissioners, and why our normal standard is to use the eastern red cedar, which is a native of Virginia.
Right.
That is exactly why we do it.
Okay, gentlemen, y'all have more questions before I open this up to the public? No question? Thank you so much for your presentation. We'll be most likely talking more with you. So at this time, I would like to open up the public hearing for special exception 2017-04. Please come forward to the podium, tell us your name, address, and your concerns, if any, for this project, please.
Good evening. My name is Annette Greenwood, and I apologize for my voice this evening. 1750 Waresbridge Road. I am one of the adjacent landowners to this project. I am tax map 23.
Can you point that out for us, please? Well, Ms. Greenwood lives. Okay, gotcha. Yes, ma'am.
I was one of the 2 people that attended the original presentation at the American Legion building by Mr. Mears and Virginia Solar. And I indicated to him at that time, and to the other gentleman that was there, that I was very concerned about this project, mostly because I am a resident here, a lifetime resident. I am a farmer's daughter, and I love to see the rural effects of growing crops and the forestry and all of that. And I did not want Waresbridge Road, that is a continual traffic area for people to go to the Dragon Run. If you just go down the road a mile from my house, you enter the Dragon Run, you can access the Dragon, you can fish, you can photo, you can boat, you can canoe, all of those wonderful things that draw people to Middlesex County and the beauty and integrity of our county. With that said, I was also very concerned about our road. For any of you who do not know or have not traveled Wares Bridge Road, I would encourage you to go and travel that road. It is a very windy and very, very bad road at this point, almost so difficult that we're having problems just regular vehicles meeting one another. The road is just breaking off and it's going away, it's eroding. And even though there may be limited traffic, according to Mr. Myers and this project, I am still very concerned. There are a lot of seniors that live on this road, and we have a huge amount of traffic from King and Queen County because this road takes you into King and Queen. And these folks are using this road to come to 17 to travel to work, both southbound and northbound. When I did attend the meeting, and I'm sorry, I don't think I misunderstood you, when he was talking about, and my question, of course, also was barriers, if you all agree to approve this. And he showed all kinds of slides about beautiful trees and how they were going to put barriers up so that we would not have to look at this, and that the landowner was very, very adamant about growing some crops and having this back. I'm sorry, folks, but I have never seen a 13 or 14-foot stalk of corn. So if we've got corn planted there, and that's seasonal, it is not going to cover this. It's just not going to cover it in its entirety for that season. And then annually, you're rotating crops, so there's going to be soybeans or winter wheat. There's always going to be a lower crop cover there. And as a landowner, and as someone who truly, truly loves where I live, I do not want to see the beauty and integrity of that area destroyed by this particular project because of a special exception or not wanting to do what they need to do if it indeed is passed. So my request is that you think long and hard about this for us on Wares Bridge Road and Middlesex County. And I know that the times are changing and we're living in a new age, but there's also our responsibility and your responsibility to protect what we have. But I do not want to see this number 8 removed. If in fact it is approved, I want to see a barrier as a landowner, and I want to see those trees planted, and I want them there to protect and to cover this particular project. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, please.
Clark Waring from Saluda, Virginia. My question was, at a prior meeting that I attended on real estate values, they mentioned that they had somebody do some work on appraising and down in North Carolina, and my particular question is, have those solar farms been around long enough to represent the real estate values? Will they actually go down in the future, or were built 3 or 4 years ago and they don't have enough samples, enough comps? And that would be my question on the real estate values. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Tom Fegan, Hartfield, taxpayer, voter. If you've got this up on your screen, go to page 464. And you'll notice on that page, it's now talking about what happens when all these go plunk, stop working. And you'll notice down a little ways on that page, it says all underground cable left in place will be cut off at a minimum depth of 3 feet below ground surface. I don't know if I heard earlier today that after they're through with the solar, this is going to become a landfill dump. Now, if you've never been involved in a landfill dump, and you're going to have all this electrical cable down there, you're not going to put a landfill dump in there. Because the first thing that happens with a landfill dump is the dirt is removed, the dump fill is brought in, then the dirt is put over the top of it. And if you're going to have a few miles of electrical cable, I'm telling you it's going to be dead. I readily acknowledge that. But if you're going to take dirt out and end up tangling up with all that electrical cable, do you suppose anyone is going to have any interest in using that as a landfill, where it becomes a productive piece of property again? That's just one of the many questions that ought to be being asked about projects like this, and haven't been for the most part. Unless you talk about Minnesota. They're asking all sorts of questions up there because it's not working. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please. Okay, seeing no one, I'll go ahead and close the public comment time and turn it over to the board members. Gentlemen, any questions or clarifications? Yes, sir.
How many feet of screening, exclusive of number 8, will be planted in this project? Roughly.
Everything, as of today, with where the native timber is, there's a little bit of a question mark, only because we haven't actually surveyed it. Yeah, thank you. So as of today, the way it reads, we would have to, this area we're going to have to plant trees in, but this, just because it is, as you can see, wetlands, the only use it actually has is to be timberland. So this is going to be planted timber anyway. This is going to be replanted sometime next year by the landowner, no matter what we do. We will also have to plant, well, a little bit of the concern, we don't know exactly where these property lines are, but we will probably have to plant some here, and then this narrow branch, as you see right here, we'll probably have to plant right here, then along Wares Bridge Road, but those are the only areas where we were thinking we're going to have to plant, because as you've seen, every place else is wooded around the boundaries.
And the one on the part on Wares Bridge is the only.
That's the biggest part, for sure.
Is that the only one subject to 8?
That is, yeah, that's how we intended to write it. Yes, sir.
Where is 8?
Sorry, the ordinance 8.
Where?
Yeah. Where's the boundary of 8?
Well, the boundary of 8 is going to be a distance from Wares Bridge Road. As we proposed, it would be 200 feet, which was right about there based on the drawing David had up. And it's just how far off of it is suitable enough to, so we don't need trees. I mean, that's really the question.
The 250 up there, was that just you said you might even take less than that?
Oh, yeah.
If you took less than 250, say you took 200, then the whole shape of the thing will change again, won't it?
That shape's gone. Well, the wetlands actually make it pretty well restrict us, just as a factual point. Yeah, here's the actual distances David brought up for us off of Wares Bridge Road. The actual shape is going to not change too much because, just as a practical answer, I got wetlands. The landowner has asked us and requested us to build from the northeast south, because that is how, and the land, that is, and we've agreed to do that for the landowner. So therefore, we're going to start up in that northeast corner and move south, and hopefully, I mean, you never know until you start, and we've still got more additional tests and studies to do, but hopefully there's nothing that would stop us from doing the design we've shown you, the site plan we've shown you. But if it does, we could end up being closer to Wares Bridge Road. I mean, that's just the risk, and that's why we want to deal with this now, unlike Dominion's dealing with it in site plan. We just want to get it done earlier.
I'm just asking a lot of questions because I just want to clarify. Dave, if you have a wetlands in the middle of your property, you still have to have 100-foot on either side of that to anyhow, don't you? Isn't that regulations? Chesapeake Bay regulations?
RPA?
So
RPA?
we have those marked on this map. They've actually, this is something we have done. We've had the RPA certified actually by the county, Middlesex County.
Okay.
So where you see this right here is where RPA, to understand.
That's your setback point.
That's the 100-foot setback from those.
Okay, just.
Yeah, the short answer is yes, it's 100 feet from wetlands, but there has to meet certain requirements in order to be considered wetlands that are RPA suitable.
Right.
That's what I've learned.
Mr. Chairman, the RPA would only be subject to a stream that's perennial.
Mm-hmm.
You could have an intermittent stream that had wetlands in it that wasn't perennial, that wasn't subject to an RPA. So you would be able to get closer to the wetlands. And there's a cookbook form where you determine where a stream is intermittent and perennial. So that's what he was speaking of.
I'm glad you understand all that, Dave. You're the only person in the room that really does, I think. So that's a good thing. So,
Mr. Chairman, I think we got to look at the issue at hand, with item 8 across here.
Sure.
And I'm sitting here looking at it. I see you have a landowner there that, that's next to her land. She has to see that every day.
Sure.
And it was, and the only way they can get around it if all the landowners around there sign off. It didn't help to me, and that's in the ordinance, isn't it?
We have till site plan to get that signed.
Right. But
Okay,
but other words, I mean, you have to get that done. But what I'm saying, to me, you have to do what you need to do by the ordinance. Go by the ordinance. Because see, if you do this, say for example, if we go around the ordinance, then any other site that we plan from now on,
he's got to provide that.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're doing away with it, and you got to go by your ordinance on that, and then you got to look at your landowners too. Would you want to see that every day going back and forth to work or wherever, or if you want to take a trot down the road or whatever, I don't live down there, but I know the road. I'm very familiar with it. But I'm sitting there, if I put myself in that landowner situation, do I want to sit down there and go by there every day and see all that? Or would I like to have it go by the ordinance and see the trees that line up through there like it's supposed to be? And if we're going to have them popping up all around in Middlesex County, what do we as Middlesex County residents want to see? Do we want to see what they got going through Essex when you go through there? Because they didn't do their own due diligence, as I would say. But we have an opportunity right now to do our due diligence of how we want to see different solar farms in Middlesex County. Do you want to be able to see them when you go down the road, or do you want to have the trees up there as you go through Middlesex County? And that's the decision we as board members have to decide. How do we want Middlesex County to be designed and set up? We're not going to sit here and let the applicants tell us how they want and what they want to do, because he doesn't live here. He lives somewhere else. I live in Middlesex County. I'm just going to tell you straight how I feel about it.
I think the argument about the risk to the plantings kind of falls short, given that you have to plant extensively in other areas. And what I was looking for was kind of the marginal increment of this area number 8. And it seems to me that it's a relatively small part of all the planting that has to be done on the site. So I'd be inclined to say we need to leave it in.
That's my point of view of looking at.
Well, the thing was that resource husbandry anyhow, which right in your mind pops, was a piece of farmland. So you don't have the luxury of having trees growing there to begin with. That would help these people. But I'm agreeing with you two gentlemen. I think we ought to keep the screening in there and go from that point on. Yes, sir.
And I think the Planning Commission has put in a lot of work on this project, and I'm reluctant to go against the Planning Commission unless I just feel so strongly on it for some other reason. I mean, we're here to put the stamp of approval on what they have approved, but I'm inclined to want to leave number 8 in there for the reasons that you all have stated, but also the planners have said this is the way we see this project being approved.
Leaving number 8 in there does not hobble the project. It's going to continue. You guys are going to put it up there anyhow, but I just think number 8 ought to be included in that. And I will tend to agree with you. The planning commission spent a lot of time and effort on this thing. Yes, sir.
So we need a motion?
Yes, we need a motion, please.
I so move to adopt the resolution including Part A.
And I second.
And you second that. All right, gentlemen. Dave, what do you want?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear what your motion was. I want to make sure this is correct. I'm going to go back to my final staff report and let y'all read that to make sure my staff recommendation.
I saw staff recommendation flash
It's
by.
all there we go, too far. My summary at the end, if you read that on your screen. That may be what you just motioned. I just want to make sure that 8 is.
We don't want to delete.
You're good. That's very good. Thank you, Dave.
Yes, Dave.
No wonder you two were hopping up and down in your seats. Yes, we want 8 deleted. Is that correct, Dave?
Yes, yes, Mr. Yes, sir.
I revised the motion.
The motion has been revised. Mr. Mansfield, you seconded. Do you agree with the revision?
The trees are going to be in there.
The trees are going to be there.
Which means 8 is deleted.
Yes,
right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There we go. We got that straight now, gentlemen. Very good.
I'm glad you came.
Thank you, Dave.
Let us know that.
Yes.
Dave, you did well on that. You did okay. All right, gentlemen, are there any other further questions before I call for the vote? Very good, then I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All disapprove, same sign. It carries. So there we are. Thank you all very much for your patience and your input, and hope everything goes well for you. All right, thank you. So moving right, y'all need a recess? Is everybody okay?
Let's get down to the bare facts.
Let's get back to the bare facts. That sounds like a good bear.
Matt, you want this handed out?
Pass that out.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, like I was told, we're going to get down to the bare facts now, so we're going to tab item B, public nudity ordinance, which is pages 490 to 491. So we have a, Michael, do you want to get up and give us a, thank you. What is this?
It's the code.
That was something to
Okay,
share.
I'm with you. This is an indecent exposure code. We have your hand, this was your handout, I assume, correct?
No, it's
No.
actually, I think, from the sheriff.
Okay, it came from, it didn't make a proceeding display of public place where the others are present or
It's just
proceeding.
that section I told you
No,
about.
no person.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, Mike, I'll turn it over to you just for a few minutes, and I'm sure some of the board members need a little clarification on this, so we'll start with you first, and then we'll talk this over, then I'll turn it over to that public hearing. Thank you, sir.
Unfortunately, I don't have anything to show you that I would need to use this tonight.
That's just as well, thank you.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I was pretty detailed last time I was here, so I don't think you need me to be more graphic. I see that you've been shown the state law in regard to indecent exposure. Of course, I'm very well familiar with that. We have had a number of cases in Middlesex in regard to indecent exposure, but the concern is over the past several years, the appellate courts in Virginia have made it a little more explicit, I should say, as to what counts as indecent exposure. And the case law is looking at only something which is deemed as obscene. There is a separate code section also which defines what obscene is. And then there are the cases which show that the indecent exposure statute only applies to where what's called the prurient interest in sex. And I went into a lot of detail last time as to what that means and went over some cases with you. I also went over some examples of some cases, such as the cases hold that the mere nudity itself is not criminalized by 18.2387. A portrayal of nudity is not, as a matter of law, a sufficient basis for finding that it's obscene. Instead, requires proof beyond reasonable doubt of, and this is where I was graphic, but it's what the case law holds, that either the defendant is visibly aroused, the accused admits to possessing the intent to have the prurient interest in sex, there's masturbatory behavior, or the total circumstance that the nudity supports an inference that the accused had as his dominant purposes a prurient interest in sex. So we have had the instances where there's been the indecent exposure. We've had some incidents that I've heard of that have not made it to court, whereby there's been some issues and problems where it hasn't risen to 18.2 387. So some other jurisdiction, of course, in Virginia have also had those same issues. I know there are at least 30 different jurisdictions in Virginia which have nudity ordinances. I think your county attorney can tell you the more specific facts on that, perhaps. And she has gone and set forth an ordinance for you to so-called cover this sort of situation where the facts are there's some public nudity, but the officers are not allowed to really take care of that under this state ordinance that now exists. I gave to you earlier a newspaper article from Fredericksburg, and in that article, the Commonwealth's attorney and the county attorney's office both addressed that issue. There had been a woman exposing her breast to a police officer. There was a gentleman walking around downtown with his pants off, no underwear, and that doesn't fall under your regular indecent exposure statute because they're just nude. So Fredericksburg was another locality that then addressed that issue with a nudity ordinance.
Excuse me, Mike, can we kind of bring this home? Why this, why now?
Okay. There have been, I've found out there have been some incidents over the years. There was an incident where at the Oyster Festival, a man took off his clothes and went to a kiddie pool at the waterfront where the kids had their little toy boats. I didn't even know when I was before you before of an incident that your deputy told me about of someone walking down 33 in front of the middle school naked. And what I have seen, though, is with the way the statute is, and this is coming across in other areas of Virginia, and with I know that, of course, with the Oyster Festival and being told of some incidents that have happened at the Oyster Festival. You may recall when the sheriff was here and he came up from the audience while I was speaking and also mentioned that there was an incident at this past Oyster Festival, which is, I didn't even know about that at that time. And I have been told about some incidents of some drunks at the Oyster Festival who have been naked, and sometimes if someone's, of course, drunk in public, they can handle it through that code section. If it's someone who's mental, you can handle it under a TDO. But I was worried that, of course, even at the high school, someone can park their pickup truck in front of an area that is not designated no parking, climb up into the back and start waving to kids and without clothes. And when I had that concern, that's when I talked to the officer at the middle school, and I'm sorry, at the high school, and he told me of the incident at the middle school.
Would this ordinance address all three of those cases?
This ordinance would address the incidents of public nudity, yes. Yes.
Only if you can prove intent.
No.
No.
No. Intent is required in regard to indecent exposure.
Why don't we go through the wording in detail?
Okay. Of the proposed ordinance?
Yes.
Okay.
Open to public view is my first question. In the first section, public nudity, unlawful, open to the public view. That means if someone is sunbathing nude in their backyard, they're subject to arrest for public nudity? Or inside the home with the curtains open, they're subject to arrest for public nudity?
No, what this is intended for is the incidents of which I've spoke of in regard to open to the public or open to public view or in a public place.
Yeah, but we have to
Again,
look at what it says, not what it intends.
and this is what it does say, intentionally appear in public. And there are many cases which go about what is in public, such as there's a drunk in public statute.
Or open to public view.
Yes. And traditionally
means-
with drunk in public, it's.
Let's go to open to public view.
And it's the same thing as what I'm telling you about right
If
now.
you're in the privacy of your home,
That's
and your
not
home
in
is on the
public.
street, you're open to public view. Somebody on the sidewalk could look into your house and see you.
The way it has been deemed in the drunk in public statutes, which reads about like this, which is it's in public, in the public view, and they're most of the time looking at if you're in view of the public from a public highway. And we'd have to look at in the court is is someone intentionally doing this or not? If someone is walking across their window naked, that's not what this is for. Okay.
But it doesn't say that.
Well, that's the way it would be held up in a
Well, then we
court.
need to fix the wording, because this says, if you're open to public view, even if you're walking from your kitchen to your bathroom, and somebody sees you through your window from the public sidewalk,
No.
you're subject to the
It's
sanctions.
going
of the
to, you always, in a criminal statute, have to look at intent. Always.
I suppose I'm in my hot tub, Mike, in my backyard, and I'm nude.
Okay.
Gosh, I know this is distasteful, gentlemen. I know y'all can't imagine me nude, and I apologize. This is a very, we gotta get to the meat of the matter here. See what we can do. But Mike, I'm sitting nude in my hot tub, the phone rings, and I get up and walk across my deck, dude, and go into the house to answer the phone. And my next door neighbor sees me and calls the sheriff. What is that called?
That's not called having the intent to violate the ordinance.
I don't know. I still.
All right, let's
Can I
go ahead.
That's not it. I'll just tell you, that's not it.
I'm a man of few words. I think the fewer words, the better. And this ordinance, the way it's worded, has got me asking all kinds of questions. I'm not an attorney, but when you say case law, what you're talking about is where a case actually went to court under this ordinance and it didn't get the person punished because they couldn't prove something. Is that about?
Yes.
All right, now.
And I have a slew of cases
What part of
here.
the exposure of his person or private parts thereof doesn't cover what we're talking about?
All right, are you asking about the indecent exposure statute?
I'm asking about
which is what you have in front of you.
18.2-387.
Okay.
And I, as a layman, if somebody intentionally makes an obscene display or exposes his person or private parts thereof, that completely describes it to me.
Well, it doesn't. For one thing, you don't have
Tom and get in
18.2.
here with us. Put Tom over there kind of close.
All right, you don't have 18.2-372 in front of you. You have 387. 372 defines the obscene display.
Okay.
And I can pass that around if you like. And then from that, you'll see your 387 code is referencing the obscene display of exposure of its person. And then you look at the code section, which I just handed out, and that then describes and defines what obscene display is.
Here, take mine. You can hand it to my.
And so then the cases look at.
I only have one.
We got one.
Thank you. Then the cases then look at what is obscene display. And so, for example, there's Nicely versus Commonwealth, whereby there was an 11-year-old boy and a 12-year-old boy, and there was a family friend who then exposed her breast to the boys. And she told the boys they were babies, lifted up her shirt and said, "Would you want some of Mama Kim's milk?" Said to one of the children that she loves my ninnies, and to another one that she likes my big boobies. And so that was deemed that the portrayal of nudity is not, as a matter of law, a sufficient basis for finding that it is obscene. What is obscene under applicable law has plagued the courts for the last 50 years.
Mike, you jumped from indecent exposure to defining obscene. I was just dealing with the indecent exposure, which is the exposure of private parts.
That's it. The indecent exposure statute, if you read it, Mr. Holt, then says, every person who intentionally makes an obscene display of exposure or exposure of his person. So you have to know then what is an obscene exposure.
But or changes the subject.
No.
To me, to indecent exposure.
Obscene display or exposure of his person. So it's an obscene display or an obscene exposure. Obscenity is then defined in 18.2372.
Mr. Hurd, if I may, can I ask for a clarification point? Is it your understanding from the case law that the courts have interpreted indecent exposure to mean obscene display or obscene exposure? Is that how they're interpreting that language there?
It can be an obscene display or obscene disclosure. It's basically used interchangeably.
The reason I ask that is because I think that's what board member Mr. Holt is getting at. He's reading that "or" to mean obscene display or simply an exposure. Is that a correct?
No, it's not. It's not. Thank you for pointing that out.
Differently is what I'm trying to get at.
Excuse me, how about we limit our discussion to the ordinance under review and the terminology in it? We talked about open to the public. Let's move down to the next, public area or buttocks.
Pubic area, I think it's supposed to be.
I'm sorry, pubic area or buttocks. That would make virtually every bathing suit obscene. Or anyone wearing a thong at a beach obscene.
Where are we now?
Definition, section, second sentence, expose or buttocks.
All buttocks. Public areas.
Okay. Let me also let you know this, Mr. LaBeouf. When I saw about in the cases about indecent exposure where, and I started to tell you about one, but there's a number of these. I knew that there is an issue I need to bring to the board as to whether or not you do want a public nudity ordinance. And I'll let you know, I didn't draft the ordinance. The ordinance is drafted by the county attorney. So I'm just here to let you know of, you do not have a nudity ordinance at this time. And that there are instances that do come up in Middlesex and other areas of Virginia whereby the officers run into situations whereby they can't always address it without a nudity ordinance because it's not covered by the indecent exposure statute. To go back, so I just let you know that I didn't draft the ordinance, and you may want to consult your county attorney about that.
How much help this is going to be to the police when you have things like expose the buttocks, any portion there of the breast thereof below the top of the nipple. That means any woman wearing a dress with a décolletage could be subject to arrest for nudity because the bottom of the V would go below the top of her nipple. You put these words down and...
I didn't.
Well,
I didn't.
Puts the words on paper and it doesn't solve the problem. It just makes the problem a little different, it seems to me. I don't see that this is very operative.
Mike, let me ask you a theoretical, because that's what we're dealing with here. All right, you have two neighbors, and they've been fighting for years, and we adopt this. And all of a sudden, one of the neighbors goes, the heck with this, and calls that sheriff and says, Mr. So-and-so is nude running around over in his backyard. Come here and take care of it. Well, you know, everybody right then will know who that person is running around nude in his backyard. And by the time the sheriff gets there and asks the guy, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm not doing anything. Well, can you prove that to me? This gentleman over here or this lady says that you were nude in your own yard. And it's, in my opinion, it's like a tube of toothpaste. Once you squirt the tube of toothpaste, the damage is already done because you can't put the toothpaste back in the tooth.
Mr. Chairman, with any criminal law, there has to be proof beyond reasonable doubt if it goes to court. So, I mean, what you're stating is about if someone calls the police and then what happens. Of course, they have to look.
Accuses someone of being nude and using this as a example. I mean, what have we accomplished? The way things are going nowadays, you know, the credibility sometimes isn't there, Mike.
If I may, one more point, and then I'll keep quiet. the last section, part of section 3, nothing in this ordinance shall be construed to apply to breastfeeding of a child, nor shall the ordinance be construed to apply to and prohibit public nudity which is part of a presentation, show, or display which, when taken as a whole, has serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Who gets to decide what's serious, artistic, literally, political, and scientific value? The sheriff's deputy?
No. That's what both of you gentlemen are looking at is what a court would decide. But first off, with what Mr. Miller was deciding, it was talking about something that probably would never ever get into court, because you're mentioning it as somebody's word that they said that this happened. There'd have to be some proof of that. And you also were having the example of someone's backyard, and that's not what this is about. If you're talking about a backyard that is the person is within 30 feet of Route 33 and that's their backyard, yes, that's a problem. If you're talking about the backyard which is shielded by trees and it's about 100 feet from the road, that is not a problem. As in regard to Mr. LaBeouf's question about what is the literary value, et cetera, where those wordings come into play is in regard to the strip club situations, et cetera, and free speech and that sort of thing. So that's where that wording comes from. And again, I didn't draft it. It's your county attorneys, your former one, and now your current one have looked at the ordinances that have actually prevailed on appeal in court and survived court challenges.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mike,
I'm going to start the public hearing here in a minute. Go ahead.
Do you happen to recall where our previous county attorney got this draft ordinance? Did he normally will look at other communities
yes.
that have do you know
yes.
which community?
I'm not sure.
I can tell you it was either York County or the city of Virginia Beach. But those are because the city of Virginia Beach had a case that went up. I did add the extra sentence there about the political or scientific value, and that's based on other statutes, other ordinances, and based on case law. But he did most likely take it either from York or city of Virginia Beach.
I was just curious. So they've had experience enforcing it, and that may be a community you could reach out to get a sense of how they enforce it.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mike. And I'm going to open up the public hearing now and see if anybody has any comments, concerns that they would like to address at this time. Yes, ma'am. Hi, Ms. Trudy.
Good evening. I'm Trudy Feegum, and I live at 164 Mariners Point Lane in Hartfield. When I ran for this board in 2013, I had among my constituents 3 different sets of voters who talked to me about issues they were having at their public access beaches. And this was with nudity, but also the cavorting and the lack of sanitary conditions that went along with all of that. In one instance, a fellow showed me where his house sits, and then he said, and here's our back porch, which overlooked down at the boat landing area, but also the beach. And he said, we can't have our grandchildren even out here in the backyard, especially toward evening, because we don't know what's going to be happening. That was very disturbing. I talked with the sheriff's office, and I was told they really didn't have an ability to deal with that. And it was because they didn't have an ordinance that they could bring into play. So then, sitting here this afternoon, I'm not a lawyer, but sitting here this afternoon, and a fellow was having an issue about what I would consider to be a public nuisance, a lot of noise, fireworks, yada yada. And I just am wondering if there is some way that this is very lengthy, very not hard to understand, but obviously there are definitions and words that it conjures up questions, and you're not really quite sure all of what it's saying. I'm wondering if there's a way of combining under public nuisance an ability to take care of what is being experienced at the Oyster Festival, what's being experienced at the beaches, and if there are other instances like with the school, some way to take care of that. And I don't mean to undermine our attorney here at all, but I just thought if there might be something we could look at. I know nudity is objective, nuisance is subjective, so that opens up a whole different set of circumstances. But anyway, my food for thought.
Thank you, Ms. Trudy, appreciate that. Next.
Civil action be an option.
Good evening. My name is Davelyn Gresham, and I live 351 Manor Road. And at first glance, it doesn't seem like this ordinance was a problem, but as it started to get picked apart, and even though the courts have to decide, you know, to drag somebody to court is quite an ordeal. If they're just running around in their backyard or they're on the beach, there's a lot of things that people do and wear. As a minister, I don't approve, but this is America. So I think you should consider long and hard before you add this ordinance. On top of the fact that Middlesex County Police have a lot of things too. And being short-staffed, do you really want to add this burden to their list? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. All right, seeing no one coming forward, this last call, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing then. All right, turn it over to the board.
Yeah.
And see what you got to say.
Yeah, I'd like to say something. We had some issues up on Canoe House Landing of some nudity that's been going on. And it has been a problem, you know. And, you know, I look at it like this. It's a tool that the sheriff department can use. And it may not happen that often. Because, you know, I hear a lot of different scenarios that some of our board members coming up. I mean, not going to be realistic. A lot of things that, and it's not explaining, you know, at your own home and somebody walking by and all that kind of stuff. It's just a tool that if something happened maybe once a year or every 4 or 5 years, it's a tool that the sheriff's department can use. It's not something that they're going to go around and look for things. Just like, for example, Wayne Jesse got to go to the bathroom real bad. I'm going to go behind the building and pee. You think somebody going to arrest me for that? That's just, I'm talking, this is a common sense thing. It's just a tool that the sheriff department can use. They may not never have to use it. But, you know, I'm sitting there thinking about, you know, a lot of people might have to go to the bathroom real bad. They're on the side of the road. Do you see them? You think somebody going to report it in and lock them up? No, it's not that. It's just another tool that on a certain situation, very, very rarely it may happen. And mark my word, it may very rarely happen. But if a call comes in for a situation like it's been up at Canoe House Landing that I have experienced and I have phone calls, I was hoping somebody was gonna come up here and talk about it, but they didn't. But anyway, this is an actual situation, you know, up there. But now we thinking about a lot of other little situations that may not never happen. You know, you do what you want to do in your own home. If somebody comes walking by looking, you know, they shouldn't be looking, get them from Pete and Tom or something, you know. But this is just another tool that a sheriff department can use. It's not nothing that's going to be rapid all over the county that everybody's going to lock you up for nudity, you know. And that's just the way I look at it.
My problem is I don't think it really says that. You know, I don't think I could write one that says what I would want to say, because there's an infinite number of cases that can happen. So I think the more nebulous that you leave it, and then let it be open to the court to decide, I think would be better. Bob's statement about the breast, you're absolutely right. If you define it as as it's written here, showing a portion, I don't.
That's okay, Pete. We know what you mean.
Yeah, I don't know whether this more complicates it than clears it up. I think intention is certainly a big portion of nudity, but I'm going to tell you, don't think I'm exactly a expert in this area. And at least I don't want to be thought
of all the meetings to begin televising.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other comment from the board?
Mr. Chairman, may I add a comment, please?
Well, I'm going to ask the board. Chip, you got any further thing to say? Bob, anything?
I understand the state statute.
Yeah.
That to me is two different things. You either did this or you did that.
Right.
And this is very plain and very simple, and I can understand it, and I understand Mr. Hurd's point. The courts are, in case law, are not doing it that way. But if they're able to scramble this thing up, what in the world could they do with all this language? Because the more you say, the more is up to interpretation and reading between the lines or whatever. I don't guess reading between lines is right, interpretation.
All right. Mr. LaBeouf?
I wonder if it would be feasible to sunset this. Try it for 6 months, with the understanding that we're going to look at it again in 6 months, and either revise it, reject it, or make it permanent.
Okay, well, we'll take that on. Yes, Madam Lawyer.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I appreciate Mr. LaBeouf's proposal. What I was going to actually ask is kind of the opposite of that, but the same intent, which is if the board, this is a previous draft of your previous county attorney. I do think the language is similar to other ordinances, but maybe it would be helpful for the board if I got other surrounding localities. I will tell you, Matthews and Gloucester do not have a nudity ordinance. I looked at Dinwiddie, City of Virginia Beach, York County. I could provide those to the board so you can see what other, maybe some larger localities are doing and what language they've used. That might be an option. You don't have to take action. You could table it and give myself or Mr. Hurd direction on what you would like to see.
I like that. You like that?
I like that.
Y'all like that?
I like that idea.
Well, with that,
I agree that we should not be trying to.
Well, make a motion, we table it, Mr. Mansfield.
Well, no, I'm not making the motion that we table it. I'm making the motion that we look into other existing ordinances and have our attorney give us her best recommendation of which ones we should take and move from there.
And that would be working with Mr. Hurd. So that
would
recommend
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right,
Because the Commonwealth's attorney
and
is
that was a good
responsible
motion,
for
Pete. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Any further discussion? I will call for the vote then. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same side. All right, so Heather, you are the nudity specialist here. So
No, sir, I defer to the Commonwealth attorney.
That may be a poor way to say it, but anyway, you do what you have to do.
So, Mr. Chairman,
I have another public comment. Has anybody got to make any public comments after all of this? Okay, I'll close the public comment at this time. Tonight's our last meeting for the year. Mr. LaBeouf, it's been a pleasure serving with you, sir. The best of luck to you. And don't forget where we are, please. And at this time, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I hereby move that we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, very good. All in favor signify by saying aye. Wish you all a very Merry Christmas and God bless each and every one of you.